Activity Committee. I'd particularly like to welcome the members of the public who've taken their time out to come to City Hall and listen, watch and have their say. But I'd also like to welcome the councillors who spend a lot of time here anyway. And should we just go around and introduce ourselves? Do you want to start, Nick? And then we'll go sort of clockwise back round to Graham.
Sure, I'm Nicholas Coombs, Councillor for Westbury and Henleys.
I'm Councillor Kaz Self for Southmead Ward.
Don Alexander, Councillor Avonmouth and Lawrence Weston.
Tim Rippington, Councillor for Brislington East.
Rob Breyer, Councillor for St George West.
Councillor David Wilcox for Lockleys.
Councillor Graham Morris, Stockwood Ward.
And I'm Ed Plowden, Councillor for Windmill Hill and Chair of this committee. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, we don't have a test plan, so please leave the room calmly via the lobby area, out of the main door of City Hall, turn right and walk down to the ramp towards the cathedral, and we assemble in front of the cathedral. In the event of the front door being on fire, then we find other exits. There are plenty of them. We have one apology. Just in the last 10 minutes or so, Councillor Emma Edwards has had a bit of a personal crisis, and don't think we're going to see her this evening. Are there any interest to declare in relation to items of business on the agenda from the committee members? I'll take that as a no. I move the minutes of the previous committee meeting held on 24th of October as a correct record. Could somebody please second that? Kaz, thank you. Are you content for me to confirm the minutes as a correct record and to sign them off? Yep. Ready to do that now? No. Okay, let's move on. Right. The next item on the agenda is Chair's announcement. Try and keep this quick. We had a golden motion on the 8th of October full council to make Bristol the UK's most accessible city. That is coming to this committee for a response, and we're hoping that's being worked on as we speak, and we're hoping that that will come to the February committee. There is no finance report to note this time round because there's no substantial changes since the last meeting. At the last meeting, I made a commitment to look at implementing road safety measures at Bellevue Road. And I'd like to honour that commitment, but I did take some information to the party leads for this committee, which showed that there's been no collisions in the last 5 years, that those that are listed would be very difficult to mitigate. For example, at least 2 of them involved cars crossing Central Reservation and hitting something on the other side of the road. And we all agreed that it would have been nice to do something here, but it's an opportunity cost for places that are of more pressing priority. So we've decided that everyone's agreed that is probably not the best use of officer time and capital resources to do that, and instead focus on other areas which are more pressing. And then lastly, I'd just like to invite Councillor Rob Breyer to update briefly on the Task and Finish group, looking at parking and curbside strategy.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to do a quick recap of where we've got to so far. We've had 2 meetings, the first of which was sort of talking through the broad brushstrokes of the curbside and parking strategy scope, and also looking at some of the parking charges which I think are coming to this committee. Or did we do that already? No, I think these are the new ones. And the second meeting was basically a input and information session where we heard from someone from Lambeth Borough Council in London, who was able to give us some insights into how the curbside strategy that they've put together was put together. So that was really helpful, I think. The next session, we are going to be talking a little bit about that, of course, to feedback on that, but also looking at what else we want to do next. And a lot of it will be to do with what options we have for forming this strategy. And that's really where, where we're up to, I think.
Thanks, Rob. We now move on to the public forum. We've got questions and statements. It would be very helpful to me in just managing this half an hour if we could just, could everyone who is here to make a statement put up their hand? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And anyone who's here to ask a question, could you put up your hand? 3, 4. Was that 4? Could you just do that again? Sorry, I may have missed 5. What I propose to do, because normally we do questions first and statements second, I propose to do it the other way around, because rather than divide the time equally, we can do the statements. I think everyone should know that they've got a minute each to summarise their statement. And then we've got, the questions are a bit more interactive, so we can use the rest of the time to use the questions. Is the committee okay with that proposal? It's reversing the normal order, but I think it makes sense. In which case, let's go through the statements. So, I'm not, because normally I try and name everyone just in case you're here when you didn't indicate you would be, but I'm not going to go through 170 people. So I think the first one who said they would be here is Steve Smith, but I can't see him. Oh, he is here. Hello, Steve.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm here to speak once again about the district car parking charges. And for me, this is simple. You've already made this decision. At your September meeting, you rejected this proposal, including the 3 hour. You discussed and debated and rejected that last time. There's no reason not to reject it again. All that's changed here is the insistence that everybody uses Ringo to get their 3 hours parking. And I think you've seen from the public forum the number of statements that there are many, many people who simply cannot and will not use that, and you are excluding them if you allow that insistence to go through. You've seen from a huge volume of well thought out, well argued, detailed public forum statements the damage that this will do to community groups, to residential streets, to places of worship, to the GP surgeries, but most of all to local shops. In 2 days' time, it's Small Business Saturday coming up this weekend. It would be a slap in the face to hard-working people running small businesses and independent shops to pass this measure now, having already rejected it 3 months ago. Please don't do it.
Very disciplined, thank you, Steve, and you're raising the bar well to people, making sure that they stick to their minute. Thank you. What are you saying?
We think the next person here is Barbara Bush's statements.
We think the next person on the line on the list is number 37, Barbara Bush. Hello, Barbara.
Is that all right? Ease of free parking for visitors is paramount in helping to keep our village alive. We don't want to see potential shoppers driven away with the lure of free parking elsewhere. Also, with the health centre being situated there, parking is a benefit. Since the 3 hour restriction was applied some years ago, I was under the impression that this has worked very well. As for charging on a Sunday, how can this be justified? I'm almost speechless at, in my opinion, the stupidity of this ridiculous idea I consider to be a pure money-grabbing greed. This short-sighted idea will undoubtedly have a huge impact on trading for the village, as well as being an unwanted added expense for a large number of people. I would be interested to know the cost involved in going ahead with this most madcap scheme. I do hope this matter will be considered in depth and rejected. A concerned resident of West Trim.
Thank you, Barbara. Another perfect minute. The next on my list is number 68, Councillor Caroline Gooch.
Hi, committee. I think you really need to think about what the point is here. What is your goal? Are you just trying to reduce car use? Or are you trying to raise money? If you're just trying to reduce car use, this isn't the way to go about it, because it's free to park on the street. So, and this is what all the residents of Westbury Village are telling us. It's a nightmare anyway, parking on the street. Why would you want to make it worse? Unless you're going to roll out RPZs beforehand, you really shouldn't even be looking at this. Apart from that, we've got free parking up at Cribs nearby, so you're going to drive business away. And then on top of that, you want people to pay to go to the doctors. Well, you'll give us an hour free, but if it takes longer than that, they'll have to pay. To access that free hour, they've got to use the Ringo system. Lots of people have complained that they won't be able to do that. So it's ageist, it's discriminating against older people and people who have trouble using apps. Even people of my age, some of them won't go and use a parking app.
Can you wrap up now, please, Caroline?
Yeah, really think about what your goal is here.
Thank you. Next up, I've got Andrew Renshaw from the Westbury-on-Trim Society.
The January 23 report said that the aim of parking charges was to promote leisure and retail economies by maximising the turnover of parking spaces and encourage greater use of public transport, walking and cycling. The last thing retailers and community organisers in the centres affected need is parking charges, encouraging people to go elsewhere. Westbury isn't doing as well as you think, nor are the other centres. Westbury is the Mall just up the road, 3 banks have just closed, and with nearby discount food stores having free parking, its role for food is as top-up only. I can think of 4 shop units that have not been relet for over 2 years. It hardly acts as a town centre now, which your planning policies seek to try to support, but charging as proposed will do the opposite, and yet the report is led by the Director for Growth and Regeneration. Conversely, allowing 4-hour stays and making spaces available for medical staff will reduce turnover. The argument that you can encourage modal change on Sundays fails to connect with reality. It will ensure that all available on-street spaces are used up first. We agree a free hour would be less harmful than previous proposals, but officers fail to appreciate that Westbury has a very elderly population and the use of the Ringo system would be a real deterrent. Any marginal benefit in sustainable transport use will be undone by the economic and social damage that the many objectors have highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next on the list, Matt Sanders. Hello again, Matt.
Hi, I'll try and paraphrase. This is about bus gate signs, surprise. When challenged about the inadequacy of bus gate signage, council officers often claim they have complied with the traffic signs regulations and general directions. This glosses over the countless ways in which they have failed to comply with the Department for Transport's traffic signs manual. I note that 10 of the questions submitted to this meeting query deviations from the traffic signs manual, and officers have failed to provide any explanation or justification for any of them. Advanced direction signs specified for bus gates are always undersized, and they are often erected in stupid positions where they are obscured by permanent features of the road. This is why the council has lost several appeals at the Traffic Penalty Tribunal, so it is not just about complying with TSRGD. At the September meeting, the Chair stated a lessons learnt review was underway to ensure the mistakes of Cumberland Road were not repeated at the new bus gates being installed in the East Bristol livable neighbourhood. But yet again, advanced direction signs are grossly undersized and placed in positions where they are obscured by other objects. Clearly, lessons have not been learned.
Thank you, Matt. Next, Dave Redgewell. Oh, okay. Well, what I'm going to do is, this is my list of people who've indicated they're going to speak, and then I'll come back and just we'll pick up anyone who's here who hasn't spoken yet.
Thanks very much. I'll be quite brief. So the issues I want to raise tonight is obviously the importance of the bus contracting. I welcome that. Just to make the point, it's only 4 million from Bristol, but the West Midlands Combined Authorities just had 13 million pounds from central government for bus service improvement plan, and North Somerset's got about 4.5. So it's about 17.5 million. We need to work through with that because those new contracts are due to go in position at WECA from April the 1st. So I very much hope that piece of work. I understand WECA's in special measures. I'm no great lover of all the issues going on down there. Just need to be sorted out. Quicker the better. But we need to work with WECA. They are the Transport Authority under the law. And we need to sort out how we're going to improve and use that money. And perhaps Tim and Ed can talk to them about how we go forward with that. On car parking charges, I support car parking charges. We need to put up the money for the car parking charges. Maybe exceptions for doctor surgeon practices, but remind everybody, South Gloucestershire's bringing in car parking charges, North Somerset's bringing in car park charges, and so are Baines. There's nothing different in Bristol to the rest of the Greater Bristol Authority area. And parking, why should people who haven't got cars have to pay for the rates and taxes on car parks? It is ridiculous. We need to cover the cost of those car parks, and it's not a thing people using buses want to pay for.
Thank you, Dave.
It needs to be balanced. Thank you.
That's your minute. Thank you. Have we got Gary Bayard or Rosa Kell? So is there anyone else here who's come here to make a statement and would like to do so? Okay, so you're standing right next to the microphone. Why don't you go? And then we will have Ian after that.
Sorry, I'm Christina Biggs from the Bristol Rail campaign. So we think we put in a statement about Ashley Hill.
Can I just stop? I don't see you anywhere on the list.
Oh dear.
So I'm afraid there's another statement from the Bristol Walking Alliance that didn't make the deadline, so I'm not going to accept that. If you can say what you wanted to say in one sentence, then I'm going to summarise the Bristol Walking Alliance's statement in one sentence, so you can do that.
Okay. So
literally one sentence, Christina.
we would like you to put in a bus stop on Sheldon Road, opposite to the northbound one. We'd like you to put southbound bus stop on Sheldon Road. At the
Noted.
bottom of Sheldon
Thank
Road.
you. And then Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to summarise a statement on behalf of Bristol Cycling Campaign in relation to Muller Road Phase 2. I'm going to summarise, it's quite a lengthy statement, as you've probably read. I'm going to summarise that in 3 points, if I may. Key one is that we are extremely disappointed that walking and cycling has been dropped and is out of scope of the OBC that's been published. We consider this to be a massive policy failure, which is not consistent with the Council's transport, environment or health goals. Also, we consider the assessment that's been prepared by officers to be factually misleading to the committee by the claims included, suggesting the plan will increase walking and cycling, despite these being dropped. On this basis, we propose that the OBC should be rejected. There's a second part to this section regarding the reallocation of funds to Concord Way. The Bristol Cycling Campaign are very keen that the section of Petherbridge Way to Dunstable Road is improved and made traffic free, but we think and consider that this should be funded through commercial levy on the developers that are profiting from the land deal, not by public funds. Concord Way.
I think that's the time limit now, Ian. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to be quite strict. I think there's one more statement. Yeah, is that you? Is that Sally? Hello, Sally. So I'll just start the clock now.
So I'll keep it brief. This relates to making Hereford Street and White House Lane one low A in Bedminster and putting in a second cycle path along a route where there is already a cycle path running parallel. So basically the decision to do that was based on flawed consultation or flawed conclusions from the consultation. So basically those were carried out in 2020 and 2021 during the COVID pandemic. 388 people from a population of over 11,000 in the Ward Hill area responded to that. So that's about 3.5% of the population. And of that population, only 150 agreed with the proposal to make it one way, which means the majority of people actually did not agree to make it one way. So the claim that the transport plan consultation had a majority of people in favour is grossly misrepresented in my view.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you there. That's already about 15 seconds over, so thank you very much. As you may be aware, the Area Committee 7 actually debated this because the petition on this yesterday. So you may be able to see Nick was there, presented the petition. So thank you, nice to see you again, Nick. And you might want to catch up with Nick as to how happy or unhappy he was with the debate we had yesterday. But we have, Lisa and I have agreed to meet with him and the project manager, and presumably you as well, on site to look at the situation. Now let's go back to the questions. So again, in order, the first question I've got is from, now this is where we've got about another just under 20 minutes to go through the questions, so if we can try and be brief with any follow-up questions and brief with our answers, then we get to as many people as we can. So I'm going to presume that the answers to the questions were published earlier today. I'm going to presume that people have seen them and ask that people maybe go straight to any follow-up questions. And if anyone wants to see the actual questions and answers, they are all published, and I don't know if they're on screen as well. They're going to be on screen. So the first one I've got on the list is Councillor Lisa Stone.
Okay. Is it working? Is it working? Okay, thanks very much, Ed. I just do a quick follow-up question because you've just, obviously, we've just said that we're going to go out on a walk around and have a look at the proposals. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for the answers to the question, first of all. Secondly, I don't agree with the answers to the questions, okay, but I'm not going to go into the details as what I don't agree about the answers here and now, so we'll do that on the walk around. And thirdly, it does. I'm going to do both my questions in one. So referring to question 3, it kind of says there that you can actually make alternative designs. It clearly states there, we can make alternative designs that can be drawn up to widen Hereford Street. So my question is this: will we make a commitment to have a look at returning Hereford Street to a 2-way in the consultation in the South Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood? That's my first question.
I don't know if Adam wants to answer that. From my point of view, the answer is that this has come up quite a lot in the consultation on South Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood, so it's inevitably going to be something we deal with. Whether or not we can make the changes is something that we'll have to look at as part of that whole process. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Adam. Not really. No.
And then I'm going to my final supplementary, because I had 2 questions, is that if the South Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood didn't happen, or for whatever reason didn't come to fruition, would we go back to a TRA to redesign and turn it back to turn Hereford Street back to 2-way, regardless of the South Bristol Liverpool neighbourhood?
Any road can be redesigned. There needs to be a rationale, funding, and reasoning and resources for that. Currently, we don't have funding or resources to do that. If there was a desire to do that, then it could be looked at, but there is no current funding or plan to.
Okay, shall we move on then to Matt?
Thank you very much.
Matt, you've presumably seen, I think you have seen the answer to the questions, because I think you referred to it in your statement. So do you have any other follow-up questions?
Well, my first question wasn't answered. It was about the Gasferry Road. Council's lost several appeals at the Traffic Penalty Tribunal due to bad signage, and so the Highway Maintenance Manager, Mr. Taylor, came to the meeting in September and said that he'd personally been along and specified 2 new signs, and one of them was installed in September, the other in October. They're both advanced direction signs in a 20-mile-an-hour road. The traffic signs manual says on a 20-mile-an-hour road, an advanced direction sign should have text with a height of 75 millimeters, which means that the sign should look like this. If my glamorous assistant can help. That is 75 millimeter text and a roundel of 450 millimeters. But instead of that, Mr. Taylor personally told us that he specified this signage. This is what they actually put, which is 50 millimeter text and a 300 millimeter blue disc. Now, the manual says that under specific circumstances, if space is limited, you can go down to 60 millimeter.
So can we get to a question?
The question is, why did you disregard the traffic signs manual's official appropriate sizes and specify a sign, yet again, which is so much smaller than it should be?
So the signs, the additional signs which have been put up are, as my understanding and the instruction to the team, were to basically copy the existing sign which was at the junction and put that out in the 2 additional places. So the sign, as I've said previously, we believe the signing to be correct. So using that sign development and design previously, we've just copied that and it put additional signs in the other 2 locations at the same size.
Please do, yes. If you can try and make it kind of more of a question and less of a statement, that would be helpful.
Okay, well, no, Mr. Taylor's correct. They have used the same size sign. This is the same size that's in Gasferry Road, Hanover Place, Mardyke Ferry Road, and the side road to the Cottage Inn, and they're all too small. They've just used the same undersized signs again. And also, advanced direction signs on the main road as well are also way too small for a 30-mile-an-hour road. So why is that?
I think we've had this question previously. As far as we're concerned as the authority, the signs are compliant.
I've shown you my working. I've told you where they are not compliant. You keep saying they're compliant. They're compliant with what?
As far as the authority are concerned, it has been designed to TSRGD, and we are comfortable and have won a number of cases at CPT to say that the signing is compliant.
Okay, well, thank you. That confirms what I said in somewhere else.
Thanks,
that
Matt.
you base your specifications not on what is the guidance in the traffic signs manual, but what you think the traffic penalty tribunal will allow you to get away with.
Matt, we do respect the traffic penalty tribunal, and we've won 90% of the cases on Cumberland Road. So I'm going to try and give the floor to other people who've. I'm going to give the floor to other people who've come here. So, Sally, would you like to ask? I'm going to assume you're going to ask follow-up questions in light of the answers you've been given.
That will help. So this is a follow-up to question number 8. So at the bottom of the response from the committee, it says we're increasingly finding with cycle lanes like the Malago Greenway, which is the cycle path I referred to earlier, which already is in existence along White House Lane, but the other side of it, that those that are built behind houses are not popular as people don't feel safe, particularly women. So having double provision, as in spending millions of pounds on the one that's going to go along White House Lane, that's your justification. So my supplementary question is, does that mean then you've wasted all the money putting in the cycle path that runs parallel already? And if so, can we please buy all the land at the back of our houses and extend our gardens and have bees?
I think the answer to that is that standards have moved on, as more and more people are cycling, we're finding that cycle paths are getting more and more crowded, and so we need to have a higher mesh density of our network of cycle paths. Did you have a second follow-up question?
You should know the cycle path, Ed. It's really a wide cycle path. It's wide enough to drive a full-size vehicle along it, should the need ever happen. And council vehicles do sometimes go across it. So it's already a very well provisioned cycle path. It's got lighting and everything. And in theory, you're saying that the cycle path that you want to put in is going to be the proper vigilance and everything of it. If you know White House Lane at night, you will know there's absolutely nobody going along there. And if you're going to feel vulnerable at night, I would say you'd feel even more vulnerable along there.
That's not really a question, but you are right, because I was concerned that fire appliances couldn't reach the school, and I have established that a fire appliance can travel along that cycle path to get to the school because of the tunnel. So yes, you're right. Shall we move on? The next person I got on the list is Dave Redwell. I just want to make sure that there's nobody here with questions 10 to 24. Okay, Dave, can we make sure that this is a question, please?
So yeah, on the so it's on the fare cap. I mean, is there any news of the bus advisory board has not yet met, maybe tomorrow, of the level of bus fares that are supposed to be set in the city region, including Bristol, by the West of England Mayor and First Group and Stagecoach?
As I understand it, the extended partnership meeting that's looking at the fare cap has been postponed 3 times and is now meeting on the 18th of December. You've got one more follow-up question, Dave.
My follow-up question is probably the question that Tina wanted to ask. What progress is being made on the Muller Road scheme, which we support, in providing that bus rail interchange that is desperately needed by the passengers that required to travel to Southmead Hospital, Eastville and to Lochleys. The present situation is there's one bus stop in one direction owned by Network Rail, we found out, and the other side has no bus stops at all. So whilst I welcome bus lanes and priority measures and cycle lanes, I want to be sure that money's not being siphoned off to Concord Way before we put the bus and rail interchange that is agreed with the West of England Mayoral Combined Authority for Transport Authority.
Is that, Adam, something you can answer?
Yeah, so we're signing off the OBC today on the scheme, which includes bus stop upgrades as well. Well, we're aiming to sign off the OBC, sorry, at committee today.
That was just in time, well done. Is there anyone else? We've got about another couple of minutes for questions. Is there anyone else here who's submitted a question and wants to ask a follow-up? I'm taking that as a no. Oh, there is, sorry, I'm so sorry. Do you want to just introduce who you are so that we can make sure we get the right question on the board?
Hello, I'm Helen Armstrong. My question was number 31 and 32.
Welcome, Helen.
The East Bristol Livable Neighbourhood Scheme. So, my question was about why it's going ahead when there's so much local opposition. And the answer I got mentioned that it wasn't about personal preference or a general dislike of the scheme. So my following up question is, why bother garnering public opinion if you're going to ignore it?
So we've done several rounds of engagement and consultation on the scheme. The point that's being made in the response is that the statutory traffic regulation order consultation is about understanding specific technical objections to the traffic regulation orders that are being proposed, as opposed to a, if you like, referendum on whether the scheme is favoured or not. That comes through the earlier engagement processes that happen. So there are a number of different engagement processes where we engage with all people in the community to get their views on the scheme. The statutory consultation is then, these are the details, are there any specific views on those details? So if someone writes into that statutory consultation to say, I don't support the scheme, that's not going to change the statutory order, if you like, because it's more about the detail of the scheme.
Can I just say, we live in the middle of the scheme, and the first we heard about it was the statutory one at the beginning of this year. That's the first we heard that it was happening. So that's the only opportunity we've had to be consulted. Just so you know, that's all that's when we learned about it.
Okay, noted. Did you want to, the last question, and then we've got to move on.
So, well, the question was about what criteria you're going to use to determine whether it's successful. And
Okay, Adam, did you want to,
well,
so it's
the
a
answers
supplementary.
were safety, traffic flow, environmental impact and legal compliance. But my question is, why don't the following factors come into your assessment? Monitoring the disruption to daily lives of the local residents and the devastating impact on local businesses that these road closures will have. Isn't that going to be monitored? Doesn't that count?
We are listening to the traffic flows, I think, would cover the disruption to people's lives, and that we are listening to local businesses, and we are going to be setting up another round of consultation and listening to after the scheme's been in place for 6 months. So,
that wasn't the answer I got, so thank you for clarifying that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for coming in. And I'd like to thank all members of the public. Sometimes we don't agree, but it's really good to see people coming in and being part of democracy. I'm just going to mention that from the new year, there's going to be a new system for submitting questions and statements to public forum. So up till now, it's been done by emails, but going forward, there'll be a new web form that residents will be asked to use to submit public forum online. That should just make it a lot more efficient for the team. And this has already been trailed for full council since October. It seems to be working okay, so it's going to be rolled out to other committees. I'm going to move us on now to agenda item 7, which is a review of car parking charges to promote sustainable transport. This report is to consider a range of measures to promote sustainable transport through parking policy. Measures to withdraw current subsidies for discretionary services, to rationalise anomalies, to improve the customer experience and facilitate effective enforcement or make efficient use of a range of public spaces to help deliver driver behaviour towards sustainable modes of transport. This is a key decision as it affects over £500,000 worth of spend or save and impacts more than 2 wards. I'm going to invite Sean to introduce and outline the report, bearing in mind that there's quite a lot of proposals in here and we're not going to take them as one big bunch. We're going to move through them sequentially, and there's a number of amendments to some of the individual recommendations. So Sean, do give us some quick basic introduction to the key points, bearing in mind that I'm sure there'll be questions as we move through each of the sequential recommendations.
Thank you for allowing us to bring the report. Basically, this is an extension of a report we brought back in September, taking on board some of the comments at that point in time. If it's okay with the chair, it is quite a long report, so I won't go into the detail, with the expectation that councillors have seen the report and read it. We have had a number of conversations to try and help shape the report, so I'm happy to take any questions, but if that's okay, I'd rather use the time for the debate.
I think that's, I'm very pleased to hear that. We've got a packed agenda today, and the other officer we've got in attendance is Sarah Clark, sitting next to you, who's also here for maybe any follow-up questions. So I'm going to suggest that we look first of all at recommendation number 1, which is approves the enforcement of school keep clear restrictions via ANPR questions. Are there any questions or comments that the... yes, I can see one already. So, Tim.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to make a kind of point of order and a clarification. We've had quite a few amendments submitted to this, well, a couple of amendments submitted to this paper, and not all of the members on my group have had time to have a look at them, but we also believe that officers need to be able to comment on the amendments so they can give their view of the impact on them. So just as we're going through them, if I could ask that we get comments on the amendment as well as the proposals in the paper as they come up, perhaps, but also before we vote, we would like to ask for a brief intermission so that we can actually formally discuss between us the amendments and our position on those.
Okay, we've got a list of all the amendments, and I think officers have checked that they are legal and appropriate and everything else, so they're all valid amendments.
They may have comments, though, on, you know, how the amendment would affect the proposals. And
yes, should we do that as we go?
Yes.
So, I'm not aware of any amendments to the first one, which is approve the enforcement of school keep clear restrictions by ANPR cameras. So, are there any? Would anyone like to ask any questions or make any comments or engage in a dialogue with officers generally? Tim.
Yeah, just say I particularly welcome this one. I think enforcement around schools is extremely difficult at the moment. Certainly, you know, with the number of schools, getting around to them is extremely difficult for enforcement officers and the police. And quite often, by the time they get there, the people who are parking irresponsibly or illegally will have moved on. But I think these cameras should be an additional tool that will give us more ability to tackle those difficult roads around schools. So happy to support this.
Graham.
Yeah, I welcome the introduction of ANPR because I think, well, my experience of taking my children to school, particularly primary school, the parking and the standard of driving was horrendous, and actually I felt it endangered the lives of young people and families. So yes, anything we can do to help reduce that behaviour is to be welcome.
I don't see any other hands up. Shall I? Oh, Emma.
Thank you. Yeah, I welcome this. One of the things I would just say, though, is it's not a silver bullet, and there's still there's still a lot of want for school streets. Not every school is eligible for a school street, that's true, but I think the fact that schools are asking us for school streets show that they can kind of see the scale of the problem and that they're willing to engage parents and look at sort of modal shift. It's about educating parents, it's about getting them on board rather than just the enforcement. So while I do welcome it, I just think we're just got to be mindful that it's not a silver bullet. We rather people just didn't drive their children to school or park inhospitably. That's not the right word. Sorry, my language isn't great this evening. Antisocial, thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Antisocial parking in the first place, and educating people around children's safety and allowing children to walk to school and not just catching people who do naughty things. Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Chair. Just one more quick question. We already have one camera car, noted in this text. How many schools can that one camera car visit in a morning and an afternoon session, please? Do we know?
The intention is to actually purchase fixed cameras, which we then move, so we'll leave dummy cameras in place. So basically, parents won't know whether the camera is enforcing or not, as it may be. So it should drive behaviour, because this is what this is very much about. It's driving behaviour, road safety, safety of school children. So yeah, the intention is as it says in the paper, there's very few contraventions we can do under the legislation with a camera. This is one. It's something me and the team have wanted to bring forward for a little while, and so we're keen to try and take it forward. But the intention would be to rotate the cameras, and if we can use the car at the same time, we shall do. But there are very few ways of us camera enforcing, so the intention is to use fixed cameras.
I'm just going to amplify two of the points made. I don't think this is a silver bullet, because children, I mean, the zigzags are there for a reason, and obviously there's a concentration of people outside the school gate, but actually children live all over the city, and we really need to be enforcing and expecting really high standards of driver behaviour wherever they are, particularly at times when there's a high number of children on the schools. And the other thing I'm going to say is that this is so obviously needed that even Eric Pickles, when he banned the use of CCTV for any parking offences in other places, has still allowed this one. And I'd personally like to see that a statutory instrument that Eric Pickles put in place back in 10 years ago reversed, because I think it would do a lot for road safety, and it would do an awful lot to help our buses move around the city, because we see a lot of antisocial parking, and I do really strongly believe that camera enforcement would be a very good way to nip that in the bud. But we are where we are. So I'm going to move this recommendation, which is to improve the enforcement of school keep clear restrictions via ANPR cameras. NPR cameras. Do I have a seconder? David Wilcox, thank you. Are we happy to move straight to a vote? Okay, would anyone, all those in favour, could you put your hands up? I'm not going to read out all the names because that's carried unanimously. Let's move on to recommendation number 2, which is to approve changes to 30-minute parking in residence parking zones to aid enforcement. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say briefly about this, Sean?
Just to say that it's heavily abused. We get people, as soon as the civil enforcement officer arrives, run out to get tickets. We can see it because obviously our policy is to give people 5-10 minutes to return to a car, so there's that delay. So as soon as they see us or recognise us, the word goes around, we're there, so people come running out. We also get abuse of the tickets of people writing, should we say, names and things like that on the tickets and then put them out, so it's a cost to us. So this is something which we've brought back from September, taking on board the comments to say how can we sort of manage that situation. So this is more about managing the situation to allow us to enforce it as per the regulations which are already in place.
And I'd just like to sort of introduce a point of order that this is now to give us better information and better data to manage that, not only to manage the situation, but it'll help us better understand how prevalent that is, and it will help us better understand what we might do in response to that. So the reason we've brought this back is because we accept that the 30 minutes the committee was minded to keep that in place, but we do want to make sure that it's not abused and we can understand what's going on. Are there any comments or questions? Questions in particular, if any have got. So, Graham, then Nick.
So if the current process is that the enforcement officers turn up, wait 5 or 10 minutes, and then start ticketing the cars or then investigate the cars, what would be different if we were to go down this route, please?
So because they have to do it online with the supplier, that will prevent them from doing multiple tickets. So once they've got their first free ticket, whether that's they wait for a CEO or whether they do it first thing in the morning, they will not be able to go and get another free ticket, which means the CEO can go through the street, they get their free ticket, come back 30 minutes later, and they won't be able to purchase another free ticket, which is what they're doing. They will be able to enforce the traffic restrictions.
Thank you.
Nick.
I think that Graham's question is the same as mine, which is essentially it's still possible to get a ticket during that grace period, just through a different method.
Would anyone like to make any comments on this, or should we move to a vote? Nick, you've got...
Oh, it seems to me that the failure is that our ticket machines are not very clever, and that they will allow the same ticket for the same car to be printed out again and again over the course of the day, and indeed will accept text which is not in the format of a number plate. These seem to be the problems, that the ticket machines aren't up to the task, and so the obvious response is to make the ticket machines better rather than to simply prohibit use of ticket machines for that purpose, as I would approach it.
I think that's inviting an officer comment, isn't it?
No, I mean the current, obviously that there's quite a lot of ticket machines with RPSs and so on out there. The ticket machines currently out there do not have that capability. We're not even sure if the technology is there at the moment. It probably is possible, but it would be extremely expensive to buy that technology into the amount of ticket machines which are actually on site, which I think is about 550, 600. 750, sorry.
I'm going to suggest that we may hold that thought as well for agenda item 8. Yes. I'm going to move this recommendation. So I'm going to move approving the proposed changes to 30-minute free parking and RPS to aid enforcement, and that's seconded by Councillor Breyer. Rob, can I have a show of hands in favour of this, please? So that is, can I just take a shortcut here and not name everyone? That's everyone other than Nick that I can see. Okay. And anyone against? Nick. And I'm assuming there's no one abstaining. Okay. Should we move on to, happy with that then, Sam? Should we move on to the staged increase of civil enforcement officer numbers and technological improvements as described in the report to improve efficiency and coverage? Sean, did you want to say a few brief comments?
Just aware on this one I know was put through as a motion by a councillor in the committee at the moment. It's something which we had no choice to not progress with previously because we didn't have the space in the premises and basically the technology which we were using with the parking wardens at the time. It was very expensive to expand. Since that, things have changed. We've moved premises, we've got better technology. So we felt as though it's something which has been, should we say, to the team, we've listened to councillors previously put in saying, can we increase enforcement? We felt we were now in a position where we could do that, so we thought we would bring it back to say, now's the time we're in a place where we can actually deliver on this previous requested.
David, then Rob.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, I do welcome this particular item, and I'd like to point out that dealing with double yellow line parkers is really important because it's not just a fact that they're parking legally, it's also a road safety issue most of the time because those double yellow lines are there for a reason to make sure that the road stays clear and is safe. So yes, I really do support this amendment. Thank you. It's a motion on it.
Rob.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a few questions just about the CEOs themselves, and like presumably the CEOs go out in groups for their own safety. Is that part of it at least? And related to that, I'm aware that there is, I don't know how prevalent it is, but that CEOs experience, verbal and potentially physical abuse because of their role. And so I guess I'm just asking a simple question: is it a rare occurrence or a common occurrence? What's the prevalence of that? Because that's a big concern, I think, just generally. I just want to know in public, basically, ask that question because I think it's important to ask.
No, CEOs do go out on their own to patrol streets, but they do have body cams. They have an automated system which can lead back so we can hear any incident which is happening. They're obviously trained to try and handle situations of that nature and actually remove themselves from theirs. They're not there to, to the death, as it were. They're encouraged to remove themselves from those situations. Obviously, we do link into the police if the situation was escalating. How often, Sarah? I don't know if you can help me with that.
I don't have any figures to hand. I would imagine. Sorry, I don't have any figures to hand. I should imagine that verbal abuse is probably a daily, weekly occurrence. Fortunately, physical abuse, which does happen, would be much, much rarer.
Okay. I've got other questions. Can I ask another question? Is that all right? It's not to do with safety. Thank you for those answers. That's really helpful to know. And actually, I think it is important to have that on record. That happens quite, regularly for those employees of the council. There's sort of an implicit assumption in the paper that we should spread civil enforcement officers across the whole of Bristol. But is there not, in this instance, a case for being a bit more nakedly biased, to be honest? The more dense inner urban areas have such a huge number of parked and moving vehicles for the space that's actually available. Is there not a case to target our enforcement on those areas to create a bit of a culture shift there? Because that's a lot of where the main arterial roads, the bus routes into the city centre, are going down. I wonder whether you could comment on that, about that sort of implicit assumption. I've heard, anecdotally, I've been told that some areas are sort of no-go areas for civil enforcement officers because of the amount of, I'm sure that's not true, you're already shaking your heads, but in the sense that, there's like a sense that the most difficult to deal with, I'm thinking of like Stapleton Road, Church Road, parts of Cheltenham Road, those areas where they've got a lot of parking and a lot of people who nip into a takeaway just for a second and come back out again. I'm just wondering whether you could comment on that, whether actually it is best to target our resources more on those areas and less perhaps on the outer areas, and why the outer areas have been mentioned here as a place that we need to particularly focus on. I know that's a contentious thing to say, but I wanted to ask it.
So we do undertake quite targeted enforcement in certain areas. So you do find that once an enforcement officer or a group of enforcement officers on different shifts or patrolling an area becomes compliant very quickly. And so it becomes almost a waste of time patrolling it because everybody's behaving and doing really well because they know that it's regularly patrolled. So then we'd move on to somewhere else and then come back. So, yes, if you've got some, I mean, we've got 52 posts at the moment. We always have some level of vacancies. So you can imagine we haven't got enough people to be in every area all day, every day. So we do very much target where problems are becoming known. But it is almost the fact that if you did have people stood there all day, then, you know, you wouldn't need enforcement because people see them and they keep going. So.
Yeah, just to add to what Patsy said, we also do have a shift rota where we target keep clears in the mornings, bus routes. Those things are all fed into the rota for the civil enforcement. So it's not just they go out into different areas. It is actually looked at, and we do rotate the staff around to focus on sort of bus lanes and sort of like things like Hot Wells Road coming in to make sure the 2 lanes are clear for traffic and buses to get into the city.
I've got Don and Emma.
Thanks. Yes, I previously spent a morning out with the enforcement officers on Stapleton Road, and I saw how tough their job was, but I was also very impressed by their professionalism. They're out in all weathers. They do face challenging conversations, challenging responses from people. They also face the fact that our infrastructure, particularly our double yellow lines, are not always well painted. So it's important for us to realise that the maintenance budget helps them to do their job properly. They shouldn't have to carry paint with them to repaint lines, and it's our responsibility to make sure that money's available for them, and our responsibility to make what's a difficult job as easy as it can be for some of our lowest paid workers. I'd also say that they protect us from accidents. They're an important part of our safety. If we're talking about safe systems, enforcement officers are a big part of it, especially around zebra crossings, etc., making sure those are kept clear, doing something. They're also important to train police, who sometimes do not realise their responsibilities in this area, and certainly the residents of my area would not appreciate any focus of enforcement officers on the central areas of the city in preference to their areas, because, as I say, this is a safety matter. It's about people's lives, and all people in this city, their lives are of equal value. Thank you.
I think what I've heard is that we're targeting the problems rather than necessarily the areas. So I think that's entirely right. I have been talking with Sean about the paint on our streets, and we've now got 2 crews out. One focused particularly on what we can enforce, and the other, I think that's right, Sean, and one focused on trying to bring us up to a sort of standard that we can be happy with from a kind of maintenance point of view.
Slight update from that. There should be, as from in the next week or 2, 4 crews roaming the city to try it out. I've invested some of the maintenance budget to try and create that impact, because I'm listening to the committee. I understand those concerns. So things like zebra crossings, mini roundabouts, if you can let us know, the more information we got, the more it will help us prioritise sending those crews. We're going to use it as a blanket approach. So, because my view is, even if you paint on top of a line which is already there, it actually will only wear out. You know, it's like, it's not a waste of money, as it were, if you see what I mean. But so we've got a few crews doing that blanket, but we're also going to have a crew doing parking restrictions, which the parking team are going to lead on, and we're also going to have a crew focusing on any health and safety inquiries coming through on zebra crossings, mini roundabouts, those sort of important elements.
Thank you, Sean. That's really good news. And the other thing I echo, Don, is I've been out with CEOs as well, and I think anything we can do to update the technology would be really good. I think some of the handhelds are getting towards the end of their life, and some of the systems don't talk very well to each other, so hopefully that's something, a work in progress as well.
Can I just to update you, they've had new handhelds in the last fortnight, so just come through.
They've got all the answers, haven't they, Emma?
Thank you. Kind of 2 little questions that follow on from both Councillor no, I'm not even going to try and say your name, Rob. We talk about areas and schedules. When sort of things are a bit more sort of focused because of an event, so I'm going to give the example of my ward, so match days, and we know that there is a particular influx of bad parking and double yellow line parking and things. Is there scope for sort of deploying more CEOs to particular areas because events are going on? I'm sure it happens in other parts of the city. And if so, is there kind of a way of sort of passing that information on and sort of letting people know that maybe more CEOs are needed at a particular time? And my second question has completely gone, so don't worry. Oh yes, I remember. Yeah, what we were just saying about the double yellow lines. Is there any way that the CEOs can then feed that information back? So if they're constantly going to a place and somebody's parking there because the yellow lines are faded, is there any way that they can sort of mark that and then sort of gather that data for us? Great. Lovely.
They do that already, but also, like I said, I've put one crew specifically to go with the parking, so parking are going to direct that crew as to where their biggest problems are, where they're having those problems. In relation to your first question, we do try to assist, but as Ed alluded, we've only got, or sorry, Patsy alluded, we've only got 52 per month. We've always have a lag in resources to employ that. We have a constant advert out for CEOs because it's quite a difficult job to employ too, because of some of the reasons which have been spoke about in the chamber tonight. However, obviously by increasing our CEOs will give us that more flexibility and that more to plan, so we will take that on board. But we do try now, but it will give us a little bit more options if we can expand the team.
Right, I'm going to move us to, I'm going to move this now. So I'm going to move that we approve the stage increase of civil enforcement officer numbers and technological improvements as described in this report. Would somebody like to second that? Nick, thank you. And should we move straight to a vote? Does anyone want to say anything else? No? Okay, so all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I'm not going to read out the numbers, so I'm going to move to the next one. I think the place, we are eating into our time a bit, and I think we're going to be debating points 5 and 6 the most. So let's just move as quickly as we can to approve the removal of free business permits for electric or low emissions vehicles in the RPS. I must say I'm fully supportive of this, because as we move to decarbonise and electrify the fleet, this will just be a Trojan horse, and we'll have more and more people getting free parking. So I think this is an essential loophole that we need to do at the moment. There aren't a huge number at the moment, so it's going to affect a very small number of people. So would anyone else like to ask questions or add to that comment? Tim, then Kaz.
Thanks, Chair. So on this one, I'm a bit concerned about some of the businesses that might be impacted. Things like, for example, a florist maybe who is trying to transition to electric vehicles for good reasons, but maybe has bought an electric vehicle, maybe in a place like Clifton. And it sort of strikes me it's a little bit kind of anti-car and anti-business. And that's all I want to say on that one.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the fact that it has a negligible financial impact, I think we are a bit worried about the negative impact it might have on encouraging businesses to move over to EVs.
I guess my thoughts on that is that once you've got an EV, the cost of driving it per mile is about a sixth of an internal combustion engine. So I feel that they're already reaping the benefits if they've managed to transition. But I'd welcome any other comments on this or anything else. No. Shall I move this then, which is a removal of free business permits for electric and low emissions vehicles in the RPS. Are you seconding that? Okay, thanks, Rob. Any other comments, or should we move to a vote? So all those in favour of this? That's Well, 6, including me.
Oh, sorry.
So it's David, Rob, Emma, Graham and Nick. All those against? Kaz, Don and Tim. And no abstentions. Let's move on to the introduction of parking charges on the Downs with officers to produce a business case for further consideration by the Parking Curbside Strategy and Task and Finish Group. Does anyone want to talk about this? This is an area where we have 2 possible amendments. So, and just to be absolutely clear, there is an amendment which is a sort of partially covers what Nick wants to cover. So I'm going to take that one first. But Nick, did you want to talk anyway?
Thank you, yes. So the Downs is, of course, a special place for people across the city who travel to it to enjoy that open space and the open air. And it's great if they travel by public transport or indeed foot if they live locally, but if they drive, then that's the problem that we're trying to address here. But I think there are 2 matters that I want to talk about here, which is about the displacement of parking caused by parking charges and van dwellers. So if you charge for parking on the Downs but not for neighbouring streets, then it seems pretty obvious to me that parking will be displaced to Stoke Bishop, to Westbury-on-Trim, which I represent, and also Westbury Park. It won't be displaced to Redland or Clifton because those areas have got residence parking zones. Therefore, I think that we need to put residence parking zones on the streets around the Downs before we can reasonably charge for using the Downs. Otherwise, it will simply be a problem displaced to less appropriate locations. That's the amendment which I have put, albeit with a typo in it. However, as the amendment from Tim Rippington is more wide-ranging, I'm happy for that one to be heard first, and mine if that one falls. Okay. Well, I guess it kicks it. I suppose that kicks it 6 months, mine kicks it a couple of years. All right. My second point is the sensitive one of the many people that live on the Downs in vans and caravans, as they do across the city. So this isn't great for people who live in vans. They don't have many facilities to live with, nor is it great for the neighbours who are often intimidated or find their amenity harmed by this. Putting in parking restrictions that would cause us legally to have to tow the vans away is a really blunt response, and clearly we would not do that. I understand it is our position that we do not tow vans that someone is living in, nor can we tow a caravan. So what we're actually doing is just highlighting a tension and inflaming the current situation whereby our residents in my ward, Stoke Bishop and around, feel that there's a 2-tier level of enforcement. And if we're going to go to a place whereby anyone who wishes to drive onto the Downs and park there for a few hours has to pay a ticket, but anyone who wishes to live there for a few months pays absolutely nothing, I understand why we get to that situation, but I think it's quite irresponsible to do that deliberately and inflame tensions in that way.
I think, Don, you were next.
Thanks. I was on the Downs Committee for 3 years, and there's a long, long history of transport projects, sort of starting, stopping, reappearing regarding the Downs. I mean, you'll remember the place and movement strategy, which went back to 2014 or even before then. Talk of Circular Road and whether we needed to keep Circular Road open. The 4018 cycle track that went down the side. To be honest, the whole governance thing of it, they went round and round, and it was very resource intensive with very little actual progress. And I think we all felt that the Task and Finish group on curbside strategy and parking got off to a good start with that paper, reflecting what Lambeth has done, trying to look at the value of the different uses of curbside, how we could quantify that and have that internal discussion, and also, you know, what we actually want to use to curbside for. I think that was really good, and I think there's a lot to be discussed there. and it's a very important discussion. I hope we can progress it as quickly as possible. But I do think that the Downs isn't any different from any other area of Bristol. There are many areas of Bristol that have different qualities than other areas. All of them should be subject to an overall strategy, but each should have something which I would perhaps describe as a design code that kind of pins down what particular characteristics we want for that area, for Sevenside Industrial Estate area, for Lawrence Hill, whatever, within that wider strategy. I don't think the Downs is different from that, and I think we should progress this as part of that wider work. I think it will bring up greater coherence to it ultimately. I don't think that will produce a less radical result at the end of the day. I don't think it will kick the can down the road either. I think it will just bring it in line with other things that are going on and clarify our rationale, which I think this proposal actually got off to a rather mixed start with mixed motives at the start, and I think we're pursuing something that started the wrong way, but I think we should pursue it as part of that wider discussion.
And that's very much the substance of the First Amendment that's going to be proposed. We have got paper copies here. I've got Rob and then Emma.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to speak to what the paper says more than... I think Don's made some good points there about how we look at things strategically, but this paper is before us, so I think we need to look at it now. I think it's a good idea to charge people to park near the Downs. It's far preferable to do that than open more car parks, for instance, in my view. I think that just encourages people to use their cars to get up there. I don't think they need to use cars to get up there, and there are many public transport and active travel options available to the public. I think, to address a little bit what Nick was saying, I think it is crucial to have more parking management areas to the north and west of Bristol. I think I've been told that it's currently not funded, so that's not something we can do immediately. So I think, even though I have sympathy with what you're saying, I do think officers need to look into that and figure out how we can fund that in the coming months, because it sounds like we haven't got anything at the moment. And I don't think that that in itself is enough of a reason to not support this proposal, because I think even though you're right, there might be an instance where people are just parking in surrounding streets, it will get dealt with eventually. And I think that the more that we can do to encourage people and disincentivise them not to use their cars through things like charging for parking, I think that's a good idea. Finally, in my view, the Downs is a park like any other in Bristol, and it should be treated as such. So I think we should use the parks model, not the RPS model. I think it also is a better model anyway. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from on this particular item. I think it's worth supporting.
Emma.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have real sympathy with you, Nick, about residents parking. If this was a debate about residents parking, I would absolutely support that, and I would support a debate about residents parking, because it is a real issue where there are areas where there is residents parking zones and the area next to it doesn't. And I can tell you full well it does create a hell of a lot more parked cars in the areas where that doesn't happen. So that does happen. However, we don't know when that's going to be, and I don't think we can't stop putting in other parking projects because of a worry about how that might spill over. There are already places where we know that that's happened and they haven't been sorted out for years. So just predicting that there might be without even being a problem yet, and actually bringing back money that could actually then, if we're creating revenue so that we can have that conversation about residents parking, which I really hope we do, because I think that's a precursor to all of our wonderful curbside ideas, which it's nice to hear we're all enthused about. So yeah, I do have sympathy, but I just don't think we can stall it for that. But let's have that conversation soon.
Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I share Nick's concerns. I think you're creating a situation whereby people are going to be asked to park to use the Downs when there are people on the Downs who are not paying to be there. I think that people will see there's an inequity in that, and it will inflame tensions, using Nick's words. So I also share the concern around the overspill, because again, we're creating problems with what we're doing here. And then when we talk about the Downs, there are parts of the Downs that are unique. You know, we have, if it's one of the largest football leagues, so if you reduce parking to say 1 or 2 hours, it won't be enough time to play a football match. So we have to take into consideration why the Downs, what it's used for, and we have to have some flexibility around the timings. I think, but as it stands and with what I've got here, I don't really think I can support it. Thank you.
I think it was Tim, then Kaz, and then we're going to start
Chair.
moving motions and amendments.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Firstly, just to clarify, I think our amendment we've brought forward just because we think that agreeing that parking should be charged, but not knowing what the proposals are for how that would work, we just feel that's putting the cart ahead of the horse slightly. So that's why we think we should go to the point, we should look at this in detail and decide whether or not there are valid proposals for how to charge, and whether we should do that, and if so, how, and then bring that back to the committee to approve. So that's really the basis of our amendment. Just the other thing to say, going back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, is we haven't had a chance to discuss how we would vote on this.
I'm happy to make a short break in the meeting, so you can have that chat.
Okay,
as you needed.
I didn't know whether you wanted to put this vote and the other one together and have one break, or whether you're happy to have 2 breaks.
I'd rather focus on properly focus on each thing, because I think they're quite different. There's obviously similar themes, and Nick's amendment reflects that. Kaz, did you want to have a word?
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad we're having a conversation about parking on the Downs. I subbed on the Downs committee a little while back, and I could see the sort of financial situation that is the Downs are facing now that they've lost the zoo parking part of this. I'm glad that Councillor Morris raised the issue of the Downs League. I've been enjoying listening to the podcast on Radio Bristol about the Downs League. I think the Downs are a very special part of the city. In terms of the actual issues raised by Councillor Coombs in terms of RPZs, I was a bit concerned about that. I think we need to have a wider discussion on that in the parking and curbside strategy group. I kind of live in Nick's ward and didn't see anything about RPZs in any of the leaflets that he delivered for the election, so it's kind of a bit of a surprise to me. And that's why I sort of sit with this one.
Okay, I'm going to move the recommendation, which is that improves the introduction of parking charges on the Downs with officers. Sorry. Oh.
So officers really happy and supportive of the amendment, and we're very happy to take that away, work with the Task and Finish group to develop the proposals and bring it back to committee. So very happy to do that.
So the recommendation we're going to vote on, first of all, unamended, is approves the introduction of parking charges on the Downs with officers to produce a business case for further consideration by the Parking and Curbside Strategy Task and Finish group. I'm going to move that. Would anyone like to second it? Emma, thank you. We're going to move straight to the first Tim's amendment, which is that the committee is asked to approve this matter being delegated to Parking and Curbside Strategy Task and Finish Group for consideration ahead of any finalised proposals being brought back to the Transport and Connectivity Policy Committee for a decision, which I think really I don't think the Task and Finish Group is actually able to do this on its own. Anyway, I think it would have to come back, so I think this is a really useful clarification of the process we're going to follow. So I'm assuming, Tim, you're moving that, and I'm actually happy to second this. Should we move straight to a vote on this part of the amendment? So yes, I'm voting for this. I'm seeing unanimous. So that now we're going to move on to the second amendment, which is that approves... I'm going to sort of read Tim's part of if you're happy, Nick, I'm going to read Tim's part of the amendment, which I think more or less encapsulates the first sentence. Or would you like to...
Yes, the motion originally was to approve the principle of parking on the downs. That has now been deleted by the amendment, as I understand. Therefore, it's not necessary for me to put in an amendment to say that, well, if we are approved in principle, then at least do the residence parking zones first. So I think my amendment falls because the thing that it sought to amend no longer exists. Therefore, it's not necessary.
What I'm taking from this is really good that we've just passed the amendment. I think we now vote on... So we're now going to vote on the recommendation as amended. And what I'm taking from this is, number one, we all think that we need a holistic parking strategy. And number two, we're very glad that there's a task and finish group because it's complicated, difficult, and we're going to have to get into a level of detail which is not best addressed here. So I'm going to move that the committee is asked to approve that this matter being delegated to the parking curbside strategy task and finish group for consideration ahead of any finalised proposals being brought back to this committee. Can we all raise our hands if we're... is there a seconder? Sorry. Tim, I'm going to assume you seconded that. Yep. So shall we raise our hands to approve that? That's unanimous. Good luck with that one, Rob. Shall we... and all of us, of course. I'm thoroughly looking forward to actually working out what the best way to manage parking across the city is. So shall we move on now to... Number 6, which is approve the implementation of charges at district car parks as described in this report. I think we've all noticed and respect the very high level of interest of this, particularly from Westbury-on-Trim. I think we've had something in the region of 140 comments on this proposal from Westbury-on-Trim. Strangely, 1 or 2 covered other areas, particularly the Westbury-on-Trim Society, but very few comments from anywhere else in the city. That is the unamended recommendation. Would anyone like to particularly ask any questions about this of officers? Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Firstly, just to say that it may be that the reason we haven't had submissions from other areas of the city is that people don't actually know this has come back to committee. That's it's always possible that people outside of our small bubble don't know about it, and obviously Councillor Smith was here and he follows these things very carefully, and
I don't think he's a councillor anymore. Councillor Gooch is here to represent that area, and
former Councillor Smith.
Former Councillor Smith is still clearly active in the area.
Yeah. So, but that's by the by. What I really wanted to drill down into here is the finances of this, because it says in the paper here, it says 200, and the cost of maintaining car parks is 276k per annum. But I think in the previous paper that we received on this, it said that that was the cost if we were, that would be the cost if we were to implement parking charges. So I just want to check which of the, I suspect that this one is the correct one, but I just want to check which of those two is right.
My understanding is it's the maintenance as it stands. So just for a little bit of context around this proposal, this is almost phase 4 of an original proposal where we did a survey of all of our non-paying car parks because of the cost of maintenance, and we could no longer afford the maintenance of those car parks. And we analysed each car park and looked at, would it be worth, could it be self-sufficient by introducing car parking? And if it did, and Westbury was one of them, we proposed to keep it. If the analysis showed that we couldn't make it self-sufficient and pay for the cost of maintenance and upkeep of that car park, then we would dispose of it. So the ones that we kept on condition that we did dispose of it, because we have lost the budget. So the proposal was approved by Cabinet. There was a budget amendment put through that supported £150,000, which supported us for the first year. But in April 2025, the full £300,000 has to be found.
So if we don't go ahead and do this, we haven't got the money to maintain these car parks, because the decision has been made prior that if the ones we keep, they have to cover their own costs, and we do not have a maintenance budget for these car parks anymore.
So, yeah, just to go into that in a bit more detail, the budget in the paper, it just says already budgeted for, so I've got no idea what the numbers are. But obviously by doing some of the things that we're doing here, like allowing an hour's free parking, that surely has got to change the ratio of, you know, the amount of money we're expecting to bring in from charging in these car parks, because I would have thought that, I mean, I don't know if you've got the numbers of how many people use these car parks for less than an hour, for instance, but what I'm worried about is the fact that we may be getting to a point where it's going to cost us more to implement these machines and things than we're actually going to get back in revenue, because some people, as we've talked about before, may be driven on street parking where it's free. When there may be an hour's free parking now, how much money do we actually think we're going to bring in now based on the current proposals, as opposed to the proposal that went through Cabinet a year and a half ago?
So our expected income from the car parks that we decided to keep and make self-sufficient, including Westbury-on-Trim, was 350,000. So I think that the statements do reflect that there is no parking on street in Westbury-on-Trim. I think the vast majority of the statements highlight the fact that the parking is jammed. I think was lots of what that word used repeatedly in the statement. So there isn't alternative parking freely available for people to just go and use. So they will have to use the car park, and like all of the other car parks in the city, there will be a charge. That charge is to cover the maintenance of the car park. The analysis has been done on the cost of implementing the machinery and the ticket machine, and it will pay for itself. So yes, there might be some slight movement if we introduce 1 hour free parking. However, that does also promote turnover, where at the moment we haven't got high turnovers in these non-pay car parks.
So that relates to Westbury-on-Trim, but obviously we've got a whole list of car parks here. I know, for instance, the one in just off Sandy Park Road, there's lots of off-street parking there, and you know the likelihood is that people may move out and park off-street if they can't park in, or if they feel they're being charged to park in that car park. So do you have? What I'm not seeing is a breakdown of the figures that we're expecting to get from this now. And I think that would have been useful to bring to this committee so that we could see the detailed figures of how much we think this is going to make and whether it will actually wash its face.
So Repton Road, the one you're referring to, the ones that we have introduced pay and display for, we are seeing that they are going to cover the maintenance cost. But when I say the maintenance cost, we've priced the maintenance of these car parks, and that comes to about £276,000 per year. The income is expected to be around 350. That will change, and it will fluctuate with introduction of 1 hour free parking if that's what's chosen today. But we're still confident we can cover the maintenance costs. The ones that we did do the analysis on, Councillor, that we thought that is not going to make enough to cover the maintenance, they're now with property for disposal.
Okay, I'll just say it would be useful to see those revised figures, because I'm not that confident, to be honest.
I think that's something that I hope that maybe officers will work with Rob to maybe have a bit of a deeper dive on this in the pursuit of a holistic parking strategy. I've got Nick, then Kaz.
Thanks. My question is similar to Tim's. I'm sure we've all seen the statement from the Westbury-on-Trim Society. Because the proposal to charge for that car park has been around for a while, the Society has done a number of traffic surveys, and I wonder if we can test the findings of those. So the statement that they've given us today says that 92% of users stay for 2 hours or less, but you've said that actually there isn't much turnover in these car parks. So do we have better data than the Westbury and Trim Society here, who tell us that actually the majority of people stay for less than an hour?
If that is the case, that people do intend to stay for an hour or less, then the parking would still remain free. It would only affect those who are wanting to stay longer than 1 hour. But we haven't got today's data, but we have got the data when we did the analysis on all the car parks. And that wasn't what we found, that it was short stay.
I must say I did really welcome the Society's analysis, and it was really helpful. I do think that putting this in will help us collect better data, and I think that's really important because we are modelling this, but there is clearly a level of uncertainty. I think the other ironic. Well, we can't collect the data unless we actually put this in, because there's two elements to this. One is being able to collect the data of how many people are availing themselves of the free parking, and the second is whether or not we achieve behaviour change. Actually, ironically, if you look at what we're trying to achieve here is less people parking and more people using alternative forms of transport, which may in itself be difficult. Yes, Patsy.
So just to say, before we took the decisions, so the decisions on which car parks were disposed and which car parks would be self-sufficient by charging, all of the analysis was done before we made those decisions. And the reason Westbury on Trim was on the list to keep was that we thought we could pay its maintenance through charging. If that had not been the case, and it wasn't the case in lots of the circumstances, we recommended them for disposal. But unfortunately, that decision has been approved, and the ones that we do keep, the expectation is we have no budget now to maintain them. If they don't pay, we've got no choice but to dispose of them.
And is that analysis actually available as part of the previous Cabinet report? I imagine there must have been a certain level of evidence in that Cabinet report. Our previous Cabinet member has confirmed that, yes, that he's satisfied that that is in place.
It was there, but it was wrong for us.
I've got Kaz. I think Graham, are you coming? Kaz, then Graham.
Keep on with the theme that Tim has raised in terms of the numbers and the £276,000. I sort of dug out a table on that, and it says clearly that the table, this is if charges are introduced. So, and the maintenance and operations part of that was £220,968. What goes into the maintenance and operations? Is it part of this, just for my benefit? And what would be the difference between a charged car park and one that's not charged?
So the maintenance regime is the tarmacking, the maintenance of the curbs, the white lines, the parking bays, and the difference between non-pay and pay and display. There isn't any. We maintain all the car parks. The point was that the ones that we couldn't afford, that didn't cover their own costs or couldn't cover their own costs, we're disposing of because we can't afford the maintenance. Though Sean is whispering in my ear that there is a difference between the solar-powered pay and displays and the normal ones.
If we're charging, clearly there's a solar-powered machine within our park.
Just for clarification, it says park and display machines 4,048. That's the cost of maintaining and keeping those up to date. And the main thing is, as Patsy says, is the white lines of tarmacking.
Yeah, that's the cost of buying one, but there is business rates and so on, other charges which we do have to pay for the car parks. And staff costs, obviously. Yeah, sorry, sir. Obviously, we've got a duty for health and safety to ensure the car parks stay safe for the public as well. So it has to be inspected in accordance with health and safety to make sure they remain safe.
I think one of the things that strikes me about all this is that behaviour will change as a result of this. And we actually don't have, other than some voluntary work by the Westbury on Trim Society, we don't have all the information we need. Kaz, do you want to finish off, and then I'll go to Graham, and then I think it was next Tim.
I just wanted to, thanks, follow up on the point you're making about behaviour change. And there are several comments about people going out to Cribbs Causeway as an alternative, or to Southmead. Yeah, I know that people travel to Southmead, to Aldi, to do shopping. So they will be driving their cars further. And if this is all about sustainability, I just want to sort of put that into the mix.
Graham?
Thank you, Chair. So a few comments. I note that obviously this decision was made by the previous administration. I contested it then, and I contested that the fact that the information for the Stockwood one was incorrect, but it's still being sold off. So in terms of the car parks that are going to be disposed, will the benefit from that come back into the parking team?
I don't know. It is with the property team who deal with the disposal. So there's a process we go through on disposals, which John can tell you about much better than I can.
So it would be a capital receipt, Councillor, and it would go into the capital programme. I have to say, it's fair to say, guys, isn't it, that the capital programme for the current year, we have a limited budget, and all 10 of the programmes that we've accepted are highways and maintenance programmes. So it's not formally ring-fenced to highways, but effectively they are the highest priority investment areas. So it's certainly for this year it would be.
So really the bottom line of getting rid of the other 4 car parks was just to reduce the cost of maintenance rather than to any definitive benefit.
That was the basis of the decision, because we couldn't make them pay for themselves. But as John says, you know, when we bid for a capital programme, I'm just speaking for my own area, management of place, I think our list was £35 million worth of capital ask, and that was not to build new things, that was to repair bridges, repair roads, repair pavements, and repair harbour walls and things like that. And of course, I think it was sort of probably over 50 million they asked from all 4 areas. And management of place did get, I can't give you a percentage, but it was over 50% of the available capital, but it was only about 10% of what we actually need. Yeah. So it will help feed in to, as we know, we get emerging bridges, walls, pavement issues that come up as emergencies and we have to address. So it does help with that.
I've got Nick. I've got lots of people wanting to talk, and we are.
Okay, I'll keep it very brief, because obviously I'm unhappy with the district proposals, because we want to keep our local shopping centres active, and I think to introduce charges will almost, you know, be a further nail in the coffin of those, particularly in areas that have very high proportion of elderly people. Westbury on Trim has the highest proportion of elderly people in the city. You sold the car park off in Stockwood, which is the second highest, along with places like Henbury. But yes, so again, I understand the concessions, but I still think that this isn't the right way of going about it, personally. Thank you.
Nick?
Chair, do you want to continue with questions, or are you ready for discussion?
I've got Don and Rob have both put their hands up.
Okay, well, last question then is, we might have seen in the public statements that the last time the Westbury Hill car park was resurfaced, it was at the expense of the doctor's surgery as part of their planning permission. I think it was, say, 106 or equivalent. Do you recognise that the last bit of major maintenance on that car park was not at our expense?
I actually made it happen, Nick, so yes, I do recognise it. But all car parks need maintenance, repair, inspection, as I said earlier. The tarmac we actually put in there was actually put in is a special type of tarmac for car parks to try and resist the turning movement. So it's actually quite a robust tarmac, but at some point it will need replacing, and it does need constant inspection and repair, like any tarmac road does.
Don, then Rob.
Thanks. The original decision regarding car parks that were no longer viable, shall we say, was for that parking services should dispose of them. That means they go into the corporate hopper, and certainly as a person who made the decision, my hope was that better uses could be found for those pieces of land by the council as a whole, possibly housing to reduce its TA costs, etc., etc., etc. One of the two car parks which has been disposed of is, to my horror, actually being disposed of at auction when it's the last piece of building land in the community. That is very disappointing. That certainly wasn't the intention of the decision that was being made, but I just wanted to clarify that. It wasn't just about finance. It was about the best use of land in communities.
So you're absolutely right, Councillor. As I think you probably know, there's a disposals process. So when a land is available for disposal, it is offered internally to various stakeholders to take forward. So that process would have been followed for these. It potentially is a timing thing about the availability of capital and resource to progress things against the sale. But I mean, it's certainly something you just mentioned to me about this, Chair. Certainly the process and the disposal process and the consultation and potential alternative uses is being looked at by the Property Task and Finish Group, I know. So that's something that can be explored.
I'm on that, but that's not without impact on people's desire to take these decisions. We all as local councillors want the best use of council land, and we would like to know what would happen when we take a decision and be sure that it does happen, and not to get an email saying it's coming up next week at auction to whoever wants it for what purpose.
I think I'm glad you're on the Task and Finish Group for property, because I think that's beyond what we can look at just now. And I'm going to move to Rob, and then I'm going to move the recommendation, and we've got Nick's kindly agreed to take his amendments in two parts.
I just want to say that I was in favour of this to start with, and I still am.
I'm going to have my moment, which is to say that I thought David Redgewell put it very well, that we have limited funds, and we have to decide where we spend our very limited public funds. And I personally would rather see limited public funds spent on subsidising public transport and things that help decarbonise transport. And that's why I'm a little bit concerned that that we've been subsidising car-based transport so long. But I also recognise that there's a sort of multiplier effect in the local economy, and that we have to be very mindful of that. So the approval is, the recommendation is that we approve the implementation of charges at district car parks as described in this report. So I'm going to move that. Would anyone like to second it? Thank you, Rob. Let's move straight on to the amendment.
Chair,
Nick,
sorry.
Yes.
Would this be an appropriate point for us to have a break for a quick discussion before we vote on Nick's amendment, please?
Well, I felt what we should do is move the amendment, get it seconded, and then you know exactly what it is, and then we can, and then you can have a short break, and then we'll do the second part of the amendment, because we're taking it in two separate parts.
Okay, and if we could get officer comment on the amendment as well, and just any impact it might have.
So, Nick, do you want to move your amendment now?
Thank you. Yes. So the reason that we have car parks, that we're allowed to have them, is in order to alleviate or prevent congestion on the streets. So that's what the Road Traffic Regulations Act says, which is what Sean read out to us before. And so to get private vehicles off the street and into a convenient central place for them, which means that we can do other things with the street. So we can have markets on the street, so we can have planters, we can put bike parking on the street. We get the cars out of the way into a specific location, and that is something that we have in the past chosen to spend public funds on. actually we make tens of millions from parking across the city. So I think in net, parking is subsidising the effects of the city council rather than the other way round. But as a point of principle, I think the car park can only work if it is a better option for the people who we are trying to attract to it than parking on the nearby streets. If the nearby streets are completely unrestricted, as they are in the majority of these 10 car parks, then that effect does not work. That, as I was talking about on the Downs, you have the displacement of parking to areas where it is it's less suitable, and it's already congested. It gets worse. I accept that there's a saturation point to that, and then we're talking about what Councillor Self raised, people deciding actually I just won't go into Westbury, I was going to drive to the shops, I'll go to Cribbs Causeway instead. So that's why one of my amendments was to delay the implementation of off-street parking charges until there are parking controls on the surrounding streets. The one to cover first, though, is about the free hour of parking. I understand that's the reason that this paper is coming back. I certainly understand Councillor Plowden's wish to move this committee along a little bit, but this item didn't have to be on the papers at all. It was brought in the full knowledge that it was controversial and it would have a lot of public statements to it. The improvement, an hour of free parking, that's definitely better than no hour of free parking. I'm glad that that was based on the Lib Dem amendment brought at the previous committee. But using just a phone or phone app for it is still a deterrent for using the car park, and it is a problem for people who are illiterate in those ways. The surgery report that they're worried that people, including their patients, will come into the surgery struggling with parking and say, can you operate this app for us? To which the receptionists are, they should not be doing that. That's not their job, and it's taking them away from clinical needs. So that was my other amendment, is that free parking should be available from the ticket machine as well as from the phone app and by phoning up. There's one other. Sorry, no, I will just leave it there. That is my proposed amendment. Free parking is available from the ticket machine as well as over the phone or app.
Would anyone like to second that amendment? Okay, Graham. I'm going to invite officers to comment, then I'm going to have a very short break while people can discuss this. The one thing that I've realised when I read this is I assumed it was just for your ward, Nick, but it's clearly not. It's clearly for across the entire piece. Thank you. So, officers, would you like to just comment on the amendment, which is free parking should be available from the ticket machine as well as over the phone and app?
So just to respond, Councillor Coombs, on why the paper's come back, we do know it's controversial. Unfortunately, the decision was made to charge in these car parks, and the reason it has to come back is because in April we have got to maintain these car parks and the budget's already been removed. So if we don't do this, we have to find the money from somewhere else, so we'll have to bring something else back to find that money. With the ticket machine, the reason we wouldn't support that as officers is for all of the reasons we talked about earlier, where it is, we know it's misused, we know that shopkeepers park all day using them and run out and just renew it when car parking machines come. We know children play in it, we know it's used for abusive messages. It totally skews the data we're able to get on use of a car park. So we don't support that, and I think for reasons that Councillor Edwards referred to before, if we delayed every decision till RPZ was implemented across the city, and I'm supportive of the proposal, but if we delayed, we are not able to meet our budget limitations next year.
Shall we have...
Is it worth clarifying that while the highways officers may not be supportive, this amendment has been cleared by legal and finance to say that it is a permissible amendment?
Indeed, which is why we're discussing it now. Tim.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about that, which is I have had experience of elderly people, relatives who live in the area of one of these car parks, for whom the challenges of phoning up from a car park to try and trying to access this system at the age of, early 80s would have been an enormous challenge. And I do think that in terms of elderly people, that this would be, a massive improvement and would help to move this along.
And I think that's supported by almost every one of 140 odd comments in the pack that we've had today expressing concern about this. I'm going to have a break. Can we make it as short as possible? I'll just allow you, Tim, to tell me when you're ready. And Okay, I think we're all back in the room. We are way over the time allocated now, so I'm going to I think we've moved and had seconded the first amendment, which is free parking should be available from the ticket machine as well as over the phone or the app. Would anyone like to say anything about this?
Yeah, if I could just say, we will be supporting this somewhat reluctantly. We do take on board the comments that officers have said about the challenges of enforcement, and that's why we've taken quite some time to discuss this. We are very concerned about the financial sustainability of all of the car parks, and we would like, in a couple of years' time, to review this to see if we have made the wrong decision on this, frankly, because it's what's more important to us than that hour's free parking, how it's obtained, ticket or otherwise, and people developing their abilities with technology. What is more important is the overall sustainability, and we're very grateful to officers that they've actually raised this with us and highlighted it. We don't want them to be sold off. We want them to be maintained and to be sustainable. But we will be supporting this amendment.
I was going to put a marker down in the ground because a number of the comments have said that we shouldn't be bringing this back, but actually we're bringing it back because last time round a number of the comments said we should be putting in a free hour, which is why it's back, because that's exactly what we're responding to those comments. I would also like to say that we've already passed something where we're going to be moving entirely to digital and app-based or telephone-based booking of the first half an hour in residence parking areas. That's going to give us a lot of information, a lot of data that we can start feeding better to this, alongside the data of what the impact of actually introducing car parking charges is at all. So at some point in the future, I would reserve the right to bring this back and look at it again in the light of further evidence, in review, in light of recommendation, whatever it was, whichever one it was, about moving to an app, and in light of actually introducing charges, should we do that at this meeting? So I'm going to lay that in the ground that this is a holding position in light of more data. So should we move to a vote on this? Who is in favour of being able to press the button for a free ticket for an hour in district car parks? So that's 6. And against? 3. And abstentions? None. Next, Nick, you've got another one, which is, would you like to propose that?
So swiftly, as I've pointed out, to avoid displaced parking, I'm suggesting that the off-street parking should only be chargeable once there are controls on on-street parking. I have heard the comments that any controls on on-street parking are in the future. My rejoinder to that is that that is our choice. It is the choice of this committee, apparently, to seek to charge for a car park before we look at controlled parking on neighbouring streets. That's not a defence. It's not saying, well, you're just kicking it into the future. That's the choice of the committee. And so that is why I think the two do need to be linked, so that controlled parking in residential areas is something that we have to look at urgently.
Would anyone like to second this? Graham, would anyone like to make any comment, or including officers? Rob?
I mean, it's reiterating what's already been said. Is I don't think you can make, if we've got something in front of us that's a potential revenue stream, I think it's difficult to just, I do think it is kicking it down the road. I do think you've got a level in which it is, because if you don't actually take the action now, we're just not able to, it's not able to action the actual thing that we're talking about today. So I would argue that we just need to get on with it, do it.
On that note, shall we move to a vote? So in favour of only implementing off-street parking charges in district car parks after the surrounding streets are subject to parking controls, all those in favour? That's Graham and Nick. All those against? That's, yes, so Kaz, Don, Tim, David, Rob, Emma and Ed. So now we're going back to the substantive motion, which is partly amended, which is that We approved the implementation of charges at district car parks as described in this report, subject to free parking being available from the ticket machine as well as over the app and the phone. All those in favour? So that's Kaz, Don, Tim, David, Rob, Emma and Ed. And against? Unsurprisingly, Tim, sorry, not Tim, Graham and Nick. Nearly got that wrong. Okay, shall we move on? I'm going to suggest that we have another set of recommendations now, which is that this be delegated. So number 7 is that, and I'm losing my place now in my notes, which the recommendation number 7 is that this delegates authority to the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration to implement the approved proposals. There's also 2 other clauses under, if you work down a little bit, which is contractual, which authorises the Executive Director of Growth and Regeneration in consultation with the Chair of the Transport and Connectivity Committee to procure, extend, vary and award any contracts in relation to the delivery of the proposals in Part 1, in line with procurement advice, and authorises the Executive Director, Growth and Regeneration to invoke any subsequent extensions, variations specifically defined in any contracts being awarded. So I'd like to see a show of hands that agrees those delegations. I'd like to move that. Would someone like to second that? Rob, and I'd like to see a show of hands in favour of those delegations being put in place. So that is everyone other than Nick. And against? Nick. And no abstentions. Okay, and I'd also like to the committee note that officers will not remove third permits of residents parking subject to a holistic review of RPS operations. And let's move on to agenda number 8. I would like to, we did plan a break at this point. I'm going to assume that people have availed themselves of the break before, and we're just going to move swiftly on to agenda item 8. Sean, sorry, I better read this out. Just to advise the committee that to seek approval to procure a new cashless telephone parking contract with an award up to £10 million over 10 years, to seek approval for the phased reduction of the pay and display machines throughout the city, as described in the report, subject to case-by-case analysis as described in the Equalities Impact Assessment, to seek approval to procure a contract value of £5 million to replace the remaining P&D machines on a 5-year schedule, including 10 years maintenance, and to seek approval to award a contract of value £500,000 for the continued operation and maintenance of the council's existing P&D pay and display machines while we replace them. This is a key decision as it affects over £500,000 save or spend and impacts more than 2 wards. Sean, would you like to just, I think we can assume that everyone's read the report and digested it, but you just may want to say a few words to introduce this, kick us off.
Yeah, our pay and display machines are, should we say, getting beyond design life, so it's important that we change them so that we can continue to charge for parking, and also it's demonstrating in the report the amount which is actually done by app and online now, to basically suggesting that we reduce our amount of P&D machines across the city, because there is an 87% usage by app, which means some machines are actually not being used and are costing us money to go and empty, as it were, because there's few change in them. So it's to do a strategic review of the pay and display machines across the entire city. But clearly there will be signing and making sure that people can be signposted to where a machine is, or be able to get the app straight away from where they're stood.
I think we had some comments earlier that our current machines might be a bit smarter in not allowing rude words to be put in, and possibly allowing being able to intercept at source people trying to get multiple free tickets. I'm going to assume that we don't have the information at the moment, but as part of if this was to pass today, then that would be something that you would take on board from comments earlier this evening.
Yes, absolutely. We will take that on board. We will investigate it. Obviously, there has to be a business consideration in relation to cost against the benefits, and that will have to be considered as part of the procurement contract. services for the machines as well.
Yeah, we can explore if that's possible.
So I think what we're saying is we'll look into that, and at the moment when we actually move towards procurement, I'll be consulted on that, and if there's any reason why I might want to contact the other committee members, I'll do so, but otherwise I'll exercise delegated authority in conjunction with the Executive Director. So, anyone would like to ask any questions? Or questions particularly, should we start with questions of officers first and then move on to comments? So I've got Rob, then Kaz, then Emma.
Thanks, Chair. So you've mentioned the car parks sort of listed from A to I, where you're considering putting in contactless as well as card. Is that, also not contactless, but card payment as well as cash. What percentage? I'm just ignorant. Sorry. What percentage of car park does that cover? How many is that in comparison to the entire lot? Could you make a estimate? Is it more than 50%? Less than 50%? You know, is that a lot of them? It's a bit of a, sorry, I know it's probably putting you on the spot and you probably don't know, but
it's almost all of them, bar a couple of short stay, which are only 2-hour maximum stay. So it's the ones with the highest value tariffs where people are least likely to have coins to hand, and where also, because of their nature as car parks, it's where people from out of the region, visitors, are more likely to be parking, who won't necessarily be familiar with the cashless parking provision, won't already have accounts set up.
So the vast majority of people who park a car using one of our car parks will be able to have access to contactless and card pavements. That's what I'm asking, I suppose. It's difficult to say, I guess. But sorry. Yeah.
Without knowing the spec of the machines, but my understanding is that when we talk about card payments now, they would be contactless and probably do Apple Pay and Google Pay and all of those things as well. But the exact specification would depend on a procurement process.
Okay, that's very helpful, thank you.
And just because I'd ask a similar question, and the answer is that this is the longer stay car parks with the higher tariffs, so that the transactional charges for doing the credit card charges are more reasonable and smaller proportion, if that makes sense, whereas it's not feasible in terms of the transaction charges and the cost of the machines to do this, on particularly on street. Kaz, you were next.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I welcome any update of our machines. Just a sort of general comment, in a way, nothing infuriates more than a machine where you can't see the digits to put in your registration plate, or they're worn out. And there's such a variation with these machines, depending on which place you go. So as we go forward, can we just think about the durability of the machines and ease of operation? In fact, somebody mentioned to me the other day, why do we have QWERTY as the system? Why can't we have A, B, C, D? Because we're trying to find a number plate. So that's just a question. Can you sort of think about these? Will you be thinking about these things in the future?
Yeah, thank you. We'll take all those comments on board as part of the procurement of the machines. We make sure the equalities side is obviously part of that procurement of those machines and making sure it delivers on those aspects of our legal responsibilities.
And I would imagine the market has already responded, because this is something that's offered to a lot of public sector organisations that have equalities duties, so the market has probably responded to that already. But we'll certainly make sure that we're focused on that. Emma, I think you were next, and then Dave.
Thank you. I have one question. So, with this little bit of a concern around digital exclusion of older users, where there is the option of a phone, I always put sort of digital exclusion around old age in terms of my mother, who's 85. She could use contactless, all that's very usual, but she doesn't carry a mobile phone. They freak her out, and I think that's probably not unfamiliar with people in their 80s. For these machines where you have the option of paying online, could there be like a static phone which goes directly to an automatic something that you could put your? Would there be any scope for that? Because obviously, if you haven't got a phone, and you haven't got an app, that would be a concern if there's no machine.
We don't believe that that is possible at the moment.
Okay.
From the suppliers. It's a question we will ask to see if it can come back to a call centre. But even if it came back to a call centre, then there's resources and revenue implications to that, because there has to be someone on the end of the phone, which at the moment would be the app supplier, not necessarily.
Okay, so because it says it did say, I thought that you could phone a number as an alternative.
You could phone Ringo, but not coming back to us. So
okay.
it depends if we can. Like I said, it's something we can take away and look at. But I would say I'm very sceptical whether or not that is available to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to talk about paragraph 12 about the recommended pay and display machines. So it was 6 million for machines that have coin and contactless, and only 5 million for coin-only machines. How much was it for just a purely contactless solution? Thank you.
Okay, I'm just wondering if you're suggesting that that's an option that needs to be put into the procurement, or
I will say contactless machines are more expensive, and obviously then you have the world pay and the card transaction costs on top of that as well.
Tim and then Rob.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah.
We're not aware of any authority in the country that has completely removed cash from their pay and display machines. We know a few that have tried, and there's been a really big public backlash against it, and they've ended up putting cash machines back in. So that's one of the reasons why we weren't proposing to kind of eliminate cash in its entirety.
And I think it's always good to get it right first time, isn't it? I think it was Tim, then Rob.
Yeah, sorry, I just following up on David's comment. The report says the additional cost doesn't seem justified given high cashless usage. So does cashless usage in that respect mean using the phone as opposed to using contactless? Because obviously contactless is cashless use, so that's a bit confusing.
Assuming there's no more questions, we move on to the debate. Shall I move the recommendations? There's however many there are, 6 recommendations on the screen. I'm assuming people have looked at them. I'm going to move this. Would someone like to second it? Rob. Okay. You want to make a point in let's have a few comments before we move to the vote.
Yeah, I mean, my main comment is just I appreciate the sense that it's an extra million to do contactless all across, but I think that's where we're going to end up going anyway. So I think it's difficult because I just wish we had that £1 million. I guess is what I'm saying. I do think things have moved on in society, and nearly everyone uses cards for most things. And I do appreciate that some people do still use cash, but if that can be kept as well, but I do think that's what we need to have from all of our machines, really, contactless. And I appreciate what you've said, so we can't fund it right now, but I do think in the future we will need to have it.
Yes, to Rob's point, I do agree with that even on the numbers in paragraph 12, paying 20% extra for a much better service is normally a good choice if most people are using that alternative service. But actually the numbers don't quite marry through from paragraph 10, which suggests that the coin-only machines are 3,750,000. So presumably it's a jump from 375 up to something else rather than 5 up to 6. So I'm not sure we've got an exact comparison there. I'm comparing between 10 and 12.
Paragraph 10 is talking about the maintenance costs, whereas paragraph 12 is talking about the procurement costs.
I see that as the maximum contract value for machine replacement plus maintenance is 3,750.
The reduced cost is based on the reduction, where the 5 to 6 is based on the existing infrastructure.
Right. So we've got a base level of machines. We can cut 25% off of that based on the reduction of machines, and there's a 20% uplift, which we've chosen not to take, of the additional cost of going contactless. So that seems that the cost of contactless for a reduced number of machines is around about 4,800, rather than the 6 million written in paragraph 12.
So there will be some contactless ones, and to offset the cost, we'll be putting them in areas of high use of. We'll look at the data, which areas do use apps or prefer cashless, and that's where we'll put them, the high volume use. I think the explanation was that in the shorter, smaller car parks, the cost doesn't stack up, but we will be there will be some of them. They are much more expensive, but we do recognise they are a better service.
Just for the people watching online, if there are anyone left, that could Nick said that's in the baseline budget, and that was confirmed. For some contactless. I guess you've also modelled the extra transactional charges of using contactless as well as part of that. So best guess estimates have been made. Any other comments or questions? Graham.
Just one question. I noticed in some neighbouring authorities that they have very fancy software where you can determine the cost based on emission or size of vehicle. I don't know if we're looking to go down that route to make it very complex, or are we just basing it upon a cost per vehicle?
Is emissions charging? I was going to say, at the moment, that's not something we're proposing, but that's not to say we wouldn't in the future.
Do you think the machines might be future-proof to be able to do that?
We will ensure that anything that we procure has that capability.
Great question, thank you. I'm going to. So I think have we moved this and seconded? I'm losing.
Yes, it has been moved and seconded.
So can we?
Sorry, Sharon.
Yeah.
Should have picked this up at the pre-meeting then. So the recommendation 2, I think. Sorry, where's the one which says what the budget envelope is? It's not clear in the recommendations how much money we are giving you. I think it's 3,750,000. And if anyone is uncertain about how much money is within the envelope, then perhaps they ought to get that into the officer recommendation section.
I'm just going to allow officers to think about that.
Sorry, we're looking for approval for the maximum budget envelope, because when we procure the new contract, we'll need to make sure, if you decide to go ahead with residence parking another day, that will require procurement of more machines. So we need to award a contract that will have sufficient headroom in it to future-proof those requirements.
And can you tell us the number so that we can be clear what we're approving?
It's in the recommendation.
Oh, it's the detail that's at the top of the report in the purpose. Yeah, we should have carried the numbers down, sorry. So it's the cashless parking contract to a maximum value of 10 million. The pay and display new machines, a maximum value of 5 million. And then a subsidiary pay and display machine 1 to continue the maintenance of our existing stock while we go through the process of 500,000.
So up to 10 million, up to 5 million, and and an actual value of 500,000.
So we're not actually approving a reduction of 25% then?
Yes, so there's the recommendation to do the procurement, and that will be up to £10 million in value. That doesn't commit us to spend that, but as Sarah said, if we expand or we bring in new RPZs and we need new infrastructure, then we can put more machines in without a new procurement. It does also, the recommendations do also ask for approval to reduce the amount of pay and display machines.
Yes, and that's the inconsistency I'm struggling with, that one part of the report says cut the number of machines and it'll be cheaper, and the other part of the report doesn't reflect that being cheaper.
I think what they're saying is that we may, at some point in the future, be introducing RPZ that will involve a lot more machines, and they're asking for sufficient headroom. I don't think there's any suggestion they're going to just blow the entire budget because we've given them up to.
So the ask is up to 10 million. So when we think of it in terms of Sean's highway contract, we'll come and ask for approval to spend 25 million on lot D or lot B, but that's only if we need it. We don't spend it if we don't need it. But what this does do is give us the ability to flex up if we need to, if we introduce more schemes. But we're not suggesting at all that we go out and spend 10 million. The contract would be worth up to 10 million.
Can I just clarify? That's the cashless one. The pay and display machine one is a value of 5 million. The expected spend to replace our existing machines, allowing for a reduction, is the 3.75, which leaves us some headroom to accommodate new asks in the future if they arise. Point 10 explains the 3.75 and then the contingency.
So I'm going to move that we use the figures as outlined in the report, which I think are quite clear, 10 million, 5 million and 500,000, accept that that's an up to, and that gives us the flexibility to be able to enter into a 5 + 2 + 2 + 1 contract.
Second that.
Okay. Which I don't think is changing anything here, so it's not an amendment or anything like that. We're just voting on the recommendations as on the screen. I'm going to move us to a vote. So those in favour of this? That's unanimous. Thanks. Press the right button. We're now looking at Muller Road. Thank you, Sarah, Sean and Patsy, for all your help today. I'm going to move us on to Muller Road Phase 2 submission of OBC and reallocation of available budget. This is to seek approval to submit the Muller Road Phase 2 outline business case and reallocate the outstanding investment fund funding available to Concord Way on the Dovercourt Road. This is a key decision and involves funds of over 500,000. Adam, would you like to say a few words to introduce this, and thank you for waiting so patiently?
Yeah, sure. So this is a scheme that was responding to a kind of programme of works that was established in 2018 around the Lockleys area due to significant number of developments in the area. So we did the Stoke Park Path, we did Muller Road Phase 1, which completed in 2023, and then this was the Muller Road Phase 2 scheme, which was developed over this time period. Originally there was a wider scope, and that was consulted on in 2019-20. That included a lot of cycling segregation over the hill on Muller Road, and that wasn't taken forward because it required a lot of tree loss, which at the time was not deemed to be acceptable. So we then looked at alternative schemes, and in 2022, current scheme was proposed. We've carried out an outline business case. We wanted to do an outline business case and a full business case to give opportunity to see what the impacts would be, what the benefits would be, and then to discuss the scheme further. So that's the point in the process that we're at. The expected spend is just over £1 million, and it has a very high benefit cost ratio of 4.3. There is scope to make amendments to the scheme as before creating the full business case. So We heard earlier about potential for additional bus stops, which we will look at around the railway and access to the new station. The scheme, as it is mainly focused on 2 sections of bus lane and a pedestrian crossing, as well as upgrading a bus stop. Some of those elements are more beneficial than other elements, and we could also look at whether to take all of those elements forward as part of developing the FBC. So we have opportunity between the OBC and the FBC to make amendments to the scheme. So the other element then is that the funding for this scheme was significantly higher than what we are looking to spend. So that does leave an amount of funding available. There are opportunities on Dovercourt Road to upgrade that route, which is the Concord Way route. Look at on-street options. We have looked at off-street options that went around the back of the developments. Technically, from an engineering perspective, they weren't feasible. So we are looking at on-road options instead. And our proposal is to take a proposal to the Combined Authority to say we'd like to use the remaining funding from this pot to develop that scheme further and to enhance Concord Way up through Dovercourt Road. So the recommendations being put forward are to approve submission for the OBC to WECA for approval at WECA Committee or WECA Directors, and then for officers to engage with WECA to seek to transfer some of that funding from Muller Road to Concord Way, and then the remaining recommendations are authorising Exec Director to take all steps required to seek the transfer investment fund and to take all steps required to procure and award the necessary contracts for this project. In consultation with the Chair.
Would anyone like to ask any questions before we move on to comments? And there is an amendment, which I'm hoping people may have seen. So I've got David, then Tim, then Graham.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some questions that I'd like to talk about. The main questions that I get from people about this scheme is why the bus lanes are so short and have such a high benefit cost ratio. Can you explain how that works, please?
So the benefits are set out in the paper, and you see one of the bus lanes has a lot more benefit than the other bus lane has. The benefit comes from the number of people on buses and the number of seconds of journey time that are saved, number of people that use the bus because the bus lane is there, and also things like the amenity of the journey, like if you're in a bus lane you feel better as a public transport user. Now some bus lanes have different effects to other bus lanes. So if you look at the traffic lights at the Sheldon Road junction, the traffic that's going southbound towards the M32 gets a kind of relatively small chunk of the green time. So therefore if buses are stuck in that queue, they're quite slow moving. So therefore a bus lane will have quite a lot of benefit in terms of getting them past 2 or 3 cycles of the traffic lights. Where you look at the bus lane going the other way, which is coming from junction 2 heading kind of north westbound up to the Glenfreen Road lights, that movement gets a lot more green time at those lights. So the majority of green time goes to the traffic going along Glenfreen Road. So therefore there's less benefit to the buses compared to not having the bus lane there, if you see what I mean. So the Sheldon Road one has a lot more benefit attached to it than the Glenfreen Road bus lane section does. These benefits are looked at over a 60-year assessment period, so relatively small changes will deliver significant benefits over a longish period of time. As I say, some are more beneficial than others.
Thank you for that. The bus lane towards Sheldon Road only has one bus every half hour. Are we looking to actually improve the frequency of buses that use that route to make the investment justifiable?
So there's no formal proposal to run more buses on that route. However, putting an infrastructure like this is a prerequisite of enabling more regular and more frequent buses. The element of the bus network that we can control is the infrastructure and bus stops, bus lanes that enable services to be more reliable. That's kind of our part in the process. So through doing this, it may be that the bus operators decide, well, actually, we want to run more bus services commercially because we're seeing the benefits, we're seeing the additional patronage. There's a lot of houses being built in the area that will also encourage additional patronage. So No, we don't have revenue funding associated with this. It's a capital project. It's something along with lots of other bus routes that we would promote.
I might well come back later, Chair. I might well ask some more questions later. I'll let everybody else go.
Right, thanks. Yeah, Adam, I'd like to bring up something that was raised at public forum earlier about location of bus stops, which I don't think we're looking at in here, but you said there is scope to change between the OBC and the FBC. You've got 3 bus routes at the moment, which are all fairly infrequent, but they all end up at Southmead Hospital. But they take different routes after Sheldon Road and Muller Road. You've obviously got the new station there at oh, excuse me. I know. Sorry, my screen just went off at that exactly. New station at Ashley Down, and it's been suggested to me that if we were to move the bus stop down to before the junction, you would then be able to come out of the station and catch any one of those 3 buses from the same place to get you to Southmead Hospital. Whereas at the moment, you have to know which bus you're going to catch and go to the relevant bus stop further up the road. So is that something that we can look at as part of the development of this scheme? Because to me, that sounds like it makes an awful lot of sense.
I mean, we will have another look at the bus stops and see what improvements we can make. I mean, I think the 24 comes down Sheldon Road and then goes down Muller Road, and the 70...
Adam, we're very pushed for time, so
yeah,
I think
okay.
the answer is yes.
We'll look at it, yeah.
Is that right? The answer is yes. We'll have another look at the bus stops as part of this scheme. We've got Graham, Nick, then Don. Did you want to respond to that point directly, Don?
I just wanted to say I think we're getting into the detail at an inappropriate level for an outline.
Well, that's what I was trying to...
We have many concerns regarding the cycling against trees and the whatever. But that is for the full business case largely and for the upcoming stages.
And the other point I wanted to make, particularly as the cycling campaign is still here, is this is not the last time we'll look at this entire corridor. This is a scheme that we want to promote, but there's I'll take the point that we could do better.
It's definitely not the first time those trees have been pitted against cycling infrastructure, as the discussion's gone on for years. But, you know, we'd like to get this through. I think give officers the power to think those through and come back to us for detail.
And it pains me to say so, but let's not make the best be the enemy of the good. Graham and then Nick.
Just 2 comments or questions. First one, section 4, we've got £100,000 additional allowance for inflation. Obviously, inflation's been a killer on a lot of projects over the last couple of years. Do we think that's enough?
That's an up-to-date amount. So, you know, we will review it as part of the FBC, and before we'll have those initial discussions about transferring funding across, but we would only transfer funding across that isn't spent on the project, if you see what I mean. So we'll make sure there is enough funding on the project. You know, if we bring in a new bus stop, for example, that will add some additional cost.
Okay, thank you. And under point 5, it says the benefits of the scheme over a 60-year assessment period.
That's standard DFT methodology.
Oh, is it right? Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you meant you've assessed it over the last 60 years, which is what confused me. Just my misreading that, sorry. And then the final point was just on 26k for a pedestrian crossing. Is that a zebra crossing or just?
So that's a signal crossing.
All right, thank you.
Seems quite cheap. Nick, did you have a question? I'm sure I've seen another hand. Or are we going back to David for further questions? Or do you want to move your amendment? Shall I move? Did you want further questions?
No, I don't have any further questions. I'm happy to move the amendment.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we do everything that it says on the screen. I'm not going to try and read it all out. Is that okay? That we've got basically approved the submission of the OBC for Muller Road Phase 2 to WECA for approval at the WECA Committee or WECA Directors, and then seek to transfer the other allocated funding to the Concord Way, and then authorises the delegation. All expect and are fairly standard in this case. Do I have a seconder? Kaz, thank you. David, you wanted to propose an amendment.
Yeah, I've got to propose an amendment to restore the back lane of the houses on Muller Road that are affected by the bus lane being implemented. because it's been left in a...
Do you want to read that out word for word, just so for the... Well, it is on the screen, so I think it's worth just reading that out.
Certainly, bear with.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah.
Approves the submission of the OBC for Muller Road Phase 2 to WECA for approval at the WECA Committee or WECA Directors with resurfacing of the back lanes between 233 to 247 Muller Road and 2 to 38 Sheldon Road to be included in the full business case for Muller Road Phase 2. These are public rights-of-way that need to be repaired and made accessible for residents to safely use. So you'd like to move that? Would someone like to second that? Emma? Don, you're keen to have a word.
Yeah, could I just, I think this is one of the details that I prefer didn't come in the form of an amendment. As it has, we should support it, providing it's not at the expense of other positive things that we've been talking about, such as, so Adam, are you happy that we can include this without it being in competition with cycling infrastructure, without it being in competition with better bus infrastructure, bus stops? Because this is like whiff of pork barrel here. I don't mind, but for the sake of whatever, we'll vote it through.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. Obviously, we'll look at the costs, but yeah, there is money in the budget that can accommodate this. We do try where possible to pick up local issues in kind of strategic schemes as well. But yes, we can look at it, and I don't have a concern in terms of the budget, in terms of including it.
Should we move to a vote on the amendment? So, has it been seconded? Yes, it has. Yes. Sorry, losing track. Can we move to a vote on the amendment? Yep. I can't. So that's everyone other than Nick. Okay. Should we say the number? 8. And then Nick. Anyone against? Abstaining? Okay, abstaining, Nick. You could say that on the microphone, but let's move on to agenda item 10, which is funding for supported bus services. This is to approve the delegation of the award of the bus service contracts up to a total of 4.7 million to the supported bus services priorities task and finish group. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. So let's just so the substantive thank you. The substantive recommendation as amended. Are we happy to vote for that? Who would? Should we have it?
Has it already been moved and seconded?
So it's been moved and seconded. We just need to pass the substantive amended motion. So let's have a show of hands, and that's now carried unanimously. Hooray! Thank you. Sorry, Nick.
Sorry,
and thank you. It's getting late, isn't it? So we're now on to agenda item 10. I'm not going to say all that again. I'm just going to, I don't know if Adam wants to say anything, but what I'm going to say about this, to try and cut this as quick as possible, is a number of us have been doing a lot of work on the supported bus services tasks and finish group. I'm extremely grateful to the entire group, especially Tim, for the work put in at speed on this. We are on the ideal situation. We bring this back to full committee for full public debate and agreement, but that would mean that we couldn't let the contracts or make sure that we've actually got the buses registered and all the paperwork ticked off in time to operate as of the beginning of April. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Adam.
Just to say, obviously, we took decisions previously to delegate authority to task and finish group to make those decisions on what services would be procured. This is the formal requirement to sign off the expenditure of the money, with that delegation still being in place.
Any comments at all? I think we've all been, so many of us have already actually been a direct part of this group. Rob and Graham.
I haven't been a direct part of this group, and I just wonder whether there's anywhere I can see what the sort of different routes that were brought up by the group. Is there anywhere I can see that?
Yes, of course. What we've done is a series of we've got a series of principles which we're going to apply to this. We've then looked at a number of routes. We'll be procuring a lot more. We'll be tendering a lot more than we can afford, and the process of whittling that down is going to be really tough for the task and finish group in due course. But happy to. I'm more than happy to make sure that all the relevant information, the clerk's just said she'll send, I think we'll send it to all of the committee just so that we've got it in one place. Tim, do you want to respond to that?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that it's confidential within this committee, obviously, because
yes,
at this point we can't go, telling everybody what we've tendered for and then find out that we don't procure them, because it will cause a lot of disappointment.
So we'll circulate that with a very clear confidential marking. Graham?
Yeah, I just wanted to say for the council, we've moved at pace on this project, and it's to be commended for all members, and I just want to thank Tim for his chairing and getting this almost over the line.
Here, here. Should we... I'm losing track now. Have we moved this yet? No, so I'm moving it. Would Graham, you'd like to second it? I'm sure Tim would have done as well. Should we move to a vote to delegate this to the Task and Finish group? Carried unanimously. That's 9 out of 9.
We're now running to time, so we can leave.
Well, let's... so the last thing on this is the corporate risk report. So we are, I'm to advise you that the report contains an update on significant current strategic risks relevant to the Transport and Connectivity Committee. The risks relate to achieving objectives set in the Council's Corporate Strategy 22 to 27, and the report summarises progress in managing the risks and actions taken as at Q2 September 24-25. I'd like to actually comment that sorry, this is a non-key decision update report. I'm going to say that there's a time lag. So we did discuss this. I think we discussed this probably in September, and almost at the same time, this was going through the strategy and resources and other and the corporate risk approach. I'd like to so the delay in the process means that really we're seeing the same things. I'd like to remind ourselves that Tim Rippington wanted to reframe the key risk from there's a risk that mass transit may not happen to, with population growth, do nothing will create unacceptable levels of congestion, which I think is a better reflection of the risk. That hasn't filtered through, but I haven't forgotten. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to filter it into the system. I'd also like to say, if I may, Alex, that the maintenance, we've heard again today that we're getting about 10% of what we actually need to maintain the things, and we are steeling ourselves from further concerns as we do a fairly intensive look at the new cut walls, cutting back the vegetation, seeing what's underneath it. And I personally would like to reiterate that I believe that the fact that the CRSTS programme is condensed already and will be hitting our streets in 2026 is also a risk. And I've worked with the team to make sure that we've got some really good Gantt charts that look at particularly the sensitivity of individual bits of the work we'll be doing and making sure the most sensitive bits, and we're not doing it at the same time, that we are working with WECA to de-risk the entire programme, and that I've also asked to go on the forward plan for this committee a review of the way we approach street works to make sure that combined with a public information campaign, we can do something like they did in London in 2012 to encourage people as far as possible, when we are doing a lot of work on the network through CSTS, to consider the need to travel and the method of travel. Alex, did you want to add anything else to that? Probably to talk about the update of the corporate plan and how we might see something filtering in.
I'm not sure what more to add actually, Ed, but thank you for that extensive introduction. So I think point taken on the mass transit, and I think I'm very happy for it to be noted in the minutes, and we'll take that away. I think it again speaks to the lag, and also that this is a Q2 report which is up to August, which isn't the end of Q2. So there's some reflection on the role and production of these reports, I think, through the review mechanism around the committee model system, having got to where we are. I guess one thing just dwelling on, particularly in relation to CRR 58, around the possible failure to adequately maintain the network and assets. There's a section in here in paragraph 11 around materialised risks. Now, clearly, there's when risks materialise, one might say they're issues. But I guess these are still ongoing risks that could get worse and that they are exhibiting visibility of materialising. So from a risk management perspective, there's deemed to be a distinction between that, and as we heard earlier, around the condition of our estate, our assets. You know, it's understood that it's a concern across the city, and the amount of money that we've been able to propose to invest through the MTFS is significant, but would still fall short of repairing it. What I would say again is that what you're seeing are risks that are deemed to be so significant that you see them, and therefore they get a score of 20 or more. There are, of course, many more risks on our risk registers, our service risk registers, and there are mitigation plans in place. I'm not really sure what more to add at this time, other than I would welcome, and I think officers would welcome, being part of a discussion about improving papers like this in the future, so they're of more use to all of us.
And that's certainly something on Tuesday that has been noted. Sam noted that and is feeding into the committee model review committee to see one of the suggestions might be that this committee actually pushes things up to Strategy and Resources Committee and takes a slightly wider view of the risks rather than being handed down the edited version from that committee. So I think this is a work in progress, but notwithstanding, I'm sure we've got questions and comments. So David and Rob. Not Rob, just David.
Thank you, Chair. Given how active our councillor group WhatsApp is tonight, I'm slightly confused about why anything about gullies isn't on this list. There seems to be lots of flash flooding happening in Bristol tonight. So why can we get gullies added to this list? Because I think the maintenance and support of stopping flash flooding incidents, I think, is going to be a real problem in the future, please.
So I would assume that it is on the risk register. It just hasn't achieved a score such that you see it in front of you today, except to say one could say it's arguably in the scope of the risk CRR 58 around the condition of our asset, because gullies are part of our asset base. But I can certainly speak to the service about distinguishing that if it's not already, albeit with a lower score.
I think there's probably a general point here, isn't there, that there's a number of risks that do float, maybe float is the wrong word, but float just below the top rated risks, isn't it? And I think as we start reviewing the way that these committees work, that would be something that we would want to be assured that is kind of, that we get a bit more visibility of the things that are just below the top rated risk.
Yeah, and it's a dynamic process, and through our management regime within services, it's always a live assessment. It's continually reappraised, and we're encouraged to do so by our risk management team.
And I think, referring back to the previous thing, we don't want to design or score or mitigate the risk register by committee, but we certainly want to assure ourselves that the things that we see as risks are being managed and dealt with and mitigated.
Absolutely happy to review with the point that you've made.
So maybe an action from this would be that we actually ask transport, so management, Alex and Patsy, let's just make it simple, to bring a report, maybe bottom-up report, rather than just waiting for the top-down report, and to summarise our top-rated risks. Would that help, John?
Can I just to support what Alex is saying? I mean, so this would be looked at really predominantly by Patsy, I think, and her team and the highways team at their DMT. But Alex and I have received it as well, so we will review the risk register at EDM. Okay. So I think there has been a lot of this happening, hasn't there? So we'll look at it. Yeah.
Graham.
What's DMT? Sorry, John. I didn't get.
So that's her Patsy's departmental level management team meeting. And then, I'm sorry, I did another one as well. EDM is the executive director meeting where I meet with the directors. Sorry.
So I appreciate we're not going to be perhaps look at every single risk. So I think what's important then is that we do some form of trend analysis. So if things are moving up towards that level, that magic score of 20, then that needs to be highlighted. I think that might be a sensible way forward.
I think it's a really valuable suggestion.
Thank you, Graham. That's a great suggestion. Well, I'm going to suggest that we note this report, and we've given some thoughts to officers about risks that are escalating, and maybe us being able to see have a little bit more visibility of the other risks that are sort of floating around, which haven't quite reached the magic number of 20. So can we note the report as per the recommendation? Thank you very much. I now conclude this meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and for the endurance of everyone, including the people left in the public gallery. The next meeting of the Transport and Connectivity Policy Committee is 5 p.m. on the 5th of February. 6th of February 2025, and I'd like to wish you all, probably be the first person to wish you all a happy Christmas and a Merry New Year, and I'll see you in February, if not before.